Chapter 768. Not long after Son of Heaven Liang ascended, the Holy Army attacked the Hua men. Now that the threat of the demons' invasion had been resolved, the Tongtian Holy Island was no longer threatened by the outside world. Naturally, internal conflicts would emerge. As the saying went, a mountain could not accommodate two tigers. Originally, the Holy Army was the only top force on the Tongtian Holy Island. Later on, the Hua men emerged as a new force and almost took the throne of the Holy Army's #1 clan. Naturally, the Holy Army would not sit idly by and watch the Hua men continue to develop. In the battle with the demon army, the Holy Army suffered great losses. The Hua men did not suffer great losses. However, the Holy Army still had two top powerhouses, while the Hua men did not have a single one. What troubled the Hua men cultivators the most was that even Saber 9 and the Shaman King had joined forces with the Honorable 10,000 Saints and arrived at the Hua men's encampment. There was not much difference in the number of Tongtian powerhouses on both sides. The Hua men even had a slight advantage. However, they lacked 4 top powerhouses. The Hua men could not resist at all. They could only hide in the 10 terminal formations set up by the sect master. Many Tongtian Holy Island powerhouses joined in the attack on the Hua men. The reason the Holy Army joined forces with various forces and powerhouses to attack the Hua men was that the Hua men cultivators and the Hua men's sect master had helped the demon powerhouses break the seal around the demon sealing tower's outer perimeter. That was indeed the case back then. However, Shaolingyu was controlled by the demon Li Jia. Unfortunately, the Honorable 10,000 Saints, Saber 9, and the Shaman King would not reveal this fact. Shaolingyu had not come out of the demon sealing tower after thousands of years. Everyone had reason to believe that Shaolingyu would most likely not come out. She would either perish together with Xie Wang or be unable to gain the demon sealing tower's acknowledgement. She would be forever trapped on the 9th level of the demon sealing tower. Moreover, even if the Lord of the Hua men could come out, what did the Holy Army have to fear? Even Saber 9 and the Shaman King were involved in this operation, as well as many organizations of various sizes from Skirich Holy Island. Those below immortal level did not need to fear any cultivators at all. The 10 terminal formation was very strong, but it couldn't withstand the continuous bombardment of countless masters. Unfortunately, the Hua men had no leader and couldn't organize an effective counterattack. In the end, the formation base collapsed. If the evil demon Li Jia hadn't emptied the Hua men's treasury and taken away all the psychic immortal stones, the 10 extremes formation might have been able to hold on for a little longer. With the last barrier broken, the Hua men had already opened their arms to the ferocious Holy Army. The Hua men cultivators all chose to withdraw from the Hua men. When they had entered the Hua men island, Shaolingyu had given them permission to leave. This was something that all the forces on heaven-reaching Saint Island knew. Too many Hua men cultivators withdrew in order to save their lives, causing the Hua men to completely lose their ability to resist. In the end, they collapsed and announced their disbandment. Many cultivators who had sworn eternal loyalty put up a desperate fight and then organized a breakout. However, without the help of top powerhouses, they could only be slaughtered mercilessly. Although the Earth powerhouses were the Hua men's allies, they were too weak to support the Hua men. They could only watch as the Hua men were destroyed. The Peacock Bright Monarch and the other Earth powerhouses knew that they were the next target of the various forces on heaven-reaching Saint Island. They had no choice but to evacuate from the demon sealing tower and spread out to hide. Even if they pretended to be weak and hid, they could not avoid being hunted down by the various forces on heaven-reaching Saint Island. One after another, the Earth cultivators were discovered and killed. The Peacock Bright Monarch had long guessed that the Earth cultivators would become the focus of the various forces on heaven-reaching Saint Island after the crisis of the demon invasion was resolved. This was why he had asked Shaolingyu to form the Hua Men Island. However, He never expected that Xiao Lingyu would not be able to come out of the demon sealing tower. In the past, the #1 powerhouse on heaven-reaching Saint Island was Tianzi Liang. He had a good relationship with the Earth cultivators, but the Sacred Army waited until Tianzi Liang ascended before making their move. The elimination of the Earth cultivators on heaven-reaching Saint Island was only a part of the Sacred Army's operation. Not long after, the Sacred Army powerhouses began to head for the narrow divine realm. More than 200,000 years later, a large number of Sacred Army powerhouses arrived in the narrow divine realm. In a narrow sense, the God realm also had a magnificent gate, and it was based on a black-armored race's ship. Unfortunately, even though the ship's quality wasn't low, it didn't last long against the attacks of the Holy Army. The Hua Men cultivators in the narrow divine realm did not have any heavenly ascension powerhouses. Faced with a large number of Sacred Army powerhouses, they could not resist at all. Very few of the Hua Men cultivators in the narrow divine realm, as well as the Hua Men cultivators who ascended from the lower realm, managed to escape. Most of them were slaughtered by the Sacred Army. Xiao Lingyu's sworn brother Gu Yunfei also died in the Sacred Army's massacre. Even the family Jiang, who had a good relationship with the Hua Men, was annihilated. Jiang Lanyue's father, Jiang Xingye, was not spared either. The Sacred Army was very ruthless. It was fine if they did not make a move, but if they did, they would not leave behind any future troubles. Among the more important Hua Men in the narrow divine realm, the only one who was spared was Xiao Lingyu's disciple, Yi Qiu. The reason Yi Qiu was spared was not because of his current strength, but because he had already left the Hua Men in the narrow divine realm long before the Sacred Army arrived, and headed for the heavenly Saint Island. Yi Qiu's speed was not fast, and he was traveling the different races of the divine realm, so he did not encounter the Sacred Army. Coincidentally, Yi Qiu left the narrow divine realm after a conversation with Yan Tianzi. As Xiao Lingyu's old friend, Yan Tianzi heard about the existence of the Hua Men after ascending to the divine realm, so he naturally came to visit Xiao Lingyu. Although he did not meet Xiao Lingyu, he did chat with Yi Qiu for a while. While chatting, Yan Tianzi suddenly thought that Yi Qiu must be extraordinary since he could become Xiao Lingyu's disciple, so he made a divination for Yi Qiu, but the result was that Yi Qiu's life would be in danger if he did not leave as soon as possible. Therefore, Yan Tianzi tried to persuade Yi Qiu to leave the narrow divine realm. The reason he used was not the result of his divination, but that Yi Qiu should travel the different races of the divine realm to broaden his horizons, and that he should go to the heavenly Saint Island to show respect to his master. Even now, Yi Qiu, who was still on his way to the heavenly Saint Island and traveling the different races of the divine realm, did not know that the Hua Men in the narrow divine realm had been destroyed. But that was not the worst thing. The most hateful thing about the Sacred Army was that in order to truly eliminate the root of the problem, they had once again sent people to the lower realm, not even sparing the descendants of the immortal, devil, and monster realms. The Sacred Army's attack on the Earth lineage was not because of Xiao Lingyu, but because in the ancient times of this universe, the powerhouses of Earth were too powerful. They had offended too many races and factions, large and small. The hatred they left behind was borne by the later generations. Even without Xiao Lingyu and the Hua Men, the Sacred Army would still join forces with the various factions of the heavenly Saint Island to eliminate the cultivators of Earth. At this time, Xiao Lingyu was also in danger. He did not expect that the glutton would become so bloodthirsty after digesting Xie Wang's energy. After waking up, the glutton's eyes were bloodshot, and his body shone with chaotic light and demonic blood light. He did not even recognize Xiao Lingyu and began to hunt Xiao Lingyu down in the large iron coffin. From the looks of it, he really did get rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. This glutton was most likely deliberately placed by the mastermind so that he could kill me at this moment. He predicted that I would let the glutton devour Xie Wang's body, and also predicted that the glutton would become like this after devouring Xie Wang's body. Just like what Xie Wang said, the mastermind has used up all his tricks. Xiaoling Yu could only shake his head and smile bitterly when he figured this out. No wonder he was always able to turn misfortune into blessings for countless years. His luck had always been good, no wonder it had always been so easy for this glutton to increase his realm and could ascend without undergoing tribulation. Even without the glutton, as long as I tried to make the demon ceiling tower recognize me as its master, I would still be trapped in this large iron coffin and unable to leave. Naturally, I would never be able to break through to the immortal realm and would be trapped here forever. In the end, I would be exhausted to death here. Since I started cultivating, I have experienced countless dangers and almost lost my life many times. How could the mastermind have calculated so accurately? If the mastermind's calculations weren't very accurate, then there must be a backup plan. I shouldn't be the only chess piece. The mastermind's plan was nothing more than to trap Xie Wang and lure the evil demon realm to invade. Then, they would exhaust the evil demon realm's vitality, so that the evil demon realm would never be able to invade this realm of the god. With the situation inside the demon ceiling tower, Xie Wang wouldn't be able to escape no matter what. Even without me as a chess piece, the evil demon realm would still invade again. However, they might not have the chance to break through the restrictions around the demon ceiling tower. Their experts might not be able to enter the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. In this way, the experts of the evil demon realm might not be completely annihilated. It seems like I am still quite useful. What if I die early? Xiaoling Yu was also confused after thinking about it. Fortunately, he stopped thinking about it and focused on dealing with the glutton's attacks. After devouring Xie Wang, the glutton's strength had become abnormally strong. Although it didn't use any divine abilities, its speed, strength, and strength had far surpassed Xiaoling Yu's. It had probably entered the immortal realm. Xiaoling Yu was definitely not its opponent. Moreover, this glutton had followed him for many years. Xiaoling Yu really couldn't bear to attack it. After being trapped in this large iron coffin for more than 10 million years, Xiaoling Yu's strength hadn't improved by much. He also hadn't figured out the 10th transformation technique. It was just that all the injuries he had suffered before had been completely healed. When he was attacked by the glutton, he was in his peak condition. The glutton was very strong. However, it had already become berserk and had lost its rationality. It only blindly charged forward, using the powerful impact of its body to deal with Xiaoling Yu. Because it was too fast, Xiaoling Yu would always be hit and his body would always be sent flying. He would fiercely smash into the iron walls of the large iron coffin before falling heavily and continuing to receive the glutton's attacks. For the time being, Xiaoling Yu's life wouldn't be in danger. However, with his injuries constantly worsening, it would be difficult for him to escape death sooner or later. Xiaoling Yu opened his heavenly eye of destruction time and time again, but he still couldn't bear to attack the glutton. He felt that if he held on for a while longer, the glutton might be able to recover. Chapter 769. In less than 1,000 years, Xiaoling Yu's healing pills were all used up. He could only mobilize the natural power in his inner world to deal with the glutton's attack. Under the obstruction of the powerful natural power, the glutton's impact was greatly reduced. However, he could still easily hit Xiaoling Yu. The natural power in his inner world was not endless. There would be a day when it would be exhausted. Perhaps before the natural power in his inner world was exhausted, Xiaoling Yu would die from his injuries. However, when he felt that he was in danger, Xiaoling Yu would launch an attack with the heavenly eye of destruction. This attack was able to repel or even injure the glutton. Just like that, millions of years passed. Xiaoling Yu was already at the end of his rope. He could not hold on for much longer. However, the glutton was still in a frenzied state of killing. Just as the Sacred Army and other forces of Tongtian Holy Island joined forces to hunt down the few remaining earth cultivators, Yan Tianzi, the disciple of Tianzi Liang, quietly entered the demon sealing tower. It had been less than 10 million years since Yan Tianzi ascended to the divine realm. However, he was now in the early stage of the Tongtian realm. The reason for his fast cultivation speed was mainly because his cultivation method was too unique. Of course, it was also thanks to the inheritance left behind by his master, Tianzi Liang. Yan Tianzi had just broken through to the Tongtian realm when he entered the demon sealing tower and went all the way to the 8th floor. Yan Tianzi's strength was naturally far inferior to that of Tianzi Liang. However, over the years, countless powerhouses of Tongtian Holy Island had entered the demon sealing tower's 8th floor. They had almost wiped out all the scattered stonemen powerhouses on the 8th floor, leaving only the 81 stonemen powerhouses in a formation guarding the stairs to the 9th floor. Otherwise, Yan Tianzi would not have been able to go too far on the 8th floor. The formation formed by the 81 stonemen powerhouses was extremely powerful. Unless they used special and powerful treasures, no matter how many cultivators below the immortal realm came, they would not be able to defeat them. Naturally, they would not be able to pass through the formation. Yan Tianzi came here. He did not have any special and powerful treasures that could trap these stonemen powerhouses. However, since he was here, he must have a way. He was more than 300 meters away from those stonemen. He casually took out some stones and began to arrange them. The stone he took out was the same as the stone on the stone golem powerhouse's body. This kind of stone was very easy to find on the 8th floor of the demon sealing tower. When Yan Tianzi piled up the stones he had picked up along the way, he began to draw an array diagram in the middle of the pile of stones. It only took him 4 hours to complete the drawing of the array. After that, he began to chant incantations around the piles of stones. The pile of stones began to tremble, and so did the stone man blocking the entrance of the stairs. After a long time, the pile of rocks began to crack, and the stone layer on the bodies of the stone golems also began to crack. Bang! Bang! The rocks in the pile of rocks began to explode one by one, while the cracks on the stone golem's body gradually expanded. Boom! Finally, a stoneman powerhouse collapsed. The moment his body touched the ground, it turned into a pile of scattered rocks. Boom! Boom! The 81 stone golems fell one by one, their powerful and indestructible bodies crumbling on the spot. Yan Tianzi only stopped chanting when all the stone golems collapsed. The piles of stones around him had already turned into piles of dust. Yan Tianzi, with a pale face and a head full of sweat, glanced at the stairs and went up to the 9th floor without adjusting his breath. It was hard for anyone to believe that the 81 stone golems, who were said to be invincible, were so easily defeated by a cultivator who had just entered the ingress realm. Yan Tianzi first adapted to the natural environment on the 9th floor. When he could communicate with it, he flew into the depths of the universe. In the process of flying, Yan Tianzi began to slowly recover his strength. After an indeterminate amount of time, Yan Tianzi finally arrived in front of the large iron coffin. He knew that Xiaolingyu was inside. "I hope I'm not too late. I've been cultivating with all my might. Don't blame me if I'm still late." Yan Tianzi sighed, then took out countless bottles and jars, as well as a special red brush. The jars were filled with many kinds of special liquids. Yan Tianzi dipped the brush in some of the jars and dipped it in, then began to draw on the runes around the coffin. After nearly 1,000 years, Yan Tianzi finally finished the last stroke. When he withdrew his hand, the runes on the coffin suddenly flashed with chaotic light, then quickly melted away. After all the runes disappeared, the lid of the large iron coffin left the large iron coffin with a bang. Roar! As soon as the lid flew off, a bestial roar sounded, and the foodie rushed out of the coffin. The foodie's body was still flashing with chaotic light and demonic blood-red light. Xiaolingyu was also brought out by the foodie's neck. Many years ago, when Xiao Lingyu couldn't hold on any longer, he used the heavenly eye of destruction to break a scale on the foodie's neck. Then, he took the opportunity to leap to the foodie's neck and stab the wound with the suicide dagger. Then, he gripped the dagger tightly, trying not to let himself fall. The foodie, who had lost its mind and was in a frenzy, could only charge around randomly. It was no longer a threat to Xiao Lingyu. If the foodie hadn't lost its mind, with its immortal-level strength, Xiao Lingyu would have died in the coffin long ago. Soon, Xiao Lingyu saw Yan Tianzi. He was stunned at first, then shouted, "Fellow Taoist, dodge!" The foodie was already charging at Yan Tianzi. The foodie was too fast, and Yan Tianzi was only in the ingress realm. Naturally, he couldn't dodge the foodie's charge. In a moment of desperation, Xiao Lingyu used the heavenly eye of destruction on the foodie's neck again. Roar! The foodie was in pain. It stopped immediately and howled at the sky. Along with this long howl, a thick blood-colored mist gushed out from the foodie's mouth and neck wound. Xiao Lingyu was blown away by the mist. His suicide dagger was also forced out of the foodie's body. When Xiao Lingyu steadied himself and held the suicide dagger in his hand again, the foodie stopped howling. Its body fell to the ground. Xiao Lingyu was also panting. He first contacted the Chaos Spectrum and brought it to his side. Then, he walked towards Yan Tianzi. "You opened the coffin?" Xiao Lingyu asked in surprise. "That's right. I risked my life to save you, Brother Xiao." Yan Tianzi nodded and smiled. "This coffin is so special. How did you open it?" Xiao Lingyu was still very doubtful. "This method of opening the coffin was actually taught to me by my master when he ascended." Yan Tianzi continued, "My master is Tianzi Liang. You should know him. Your master is so unrighteous. If he knew how to open the coffin, why didn't he come to save me earlier?" Xiao Lingyu said indignantly. "Haha, my master had his own difficulties. After all, he was a cultivator who was about to ascend to the upper realm. How could he so easily get involved in dangerous situations?" Yan Tianzi smiled and explained, "If not for the fact that I still owe Brother Xiao my life, I wouldn't have dared to get involved in this mess. After hearing about your situation, I begged my master for a long time before he imparted the method of opening the coffin to me before he ascended. I thought Tianzi Liang was a powerful cultivator. I didn't expect him to be so cowardly." Although it was inappropriate to scold him in front of his disciple, Xiao Lingyu couldn't help but say it. Yan Tianzi only smiled and said, "As long as you're fine, brother." Xiao Lingyu then cupped his fists and bowed to Yan Tianzi, saying, "You're so righteous. Fellow Taoist, you've saved my life again. Thank you, brother." Yan Tianzi helped Xiao Lingyu up and pointed at foodie not far away, saying, "Something seems to have happened to it." Xiao Lingyu nodded and said, "Back then, I let him devour the evil king's body. In the end, he woke up after sleeping for many years and actually became irrational. He attacked me crazily. If you had come a little later, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to hold on." Yan Tianzi frowned and said, "However, it seems to be waking up again. It must have spat out some evil things just now." Xiao Lingyu used his divine sense to scan Gluttony's body. Seeing that there was no longer any demonic blood radiance on Gluttony's body, there was only a faint, chaotic light. He said, "Strange, it must have gone crazy only when it was in the big iron coffin. That's why it couldn't expel the evil things it ate. No matter what, I think there's something wrong with this strange beast. Even if you don't want to kill it, it's best that you don't keep it with you." Yan Tianzi kindly reminded him. To be honest, Xiao Lingyu really didn't want to kill foodie. If he did, he wouldn't have hesitated to kill foodie in the iron coffin. After all, foodie had followed him for many years and fought for him for countless years. Foodie was now extremely weak. Its wounds were still bleeding. After it fell, it kept staring at Xiao Lingyu, looking very pitiful. "Let's not talk about it for now. How do we get out of here?" Xiao Lingyu changed the topic. "There's only one way out, and that's to be recognized by the demon sealing tower and send yourself out. Yan Tianzi shrugged and said, "Last time, I almost got myself killed because the demon sealing tower recognized me as its master," Xiaolingyu said. "It's different this time. The curse on the iron coffin has been broken. It shouldn't be a problem to make it recognize you as its master again." Yan Tianzi said, "Since there's no other way, we'll have to try." As he spoke, Xiaolingyu walked to the iron coffin again. Then, just like last time, he released his pure chaotic divine power to touch the iron coffin. Then, he used his mind to communicate with it. Not long after, the demon sealing tower's spirituality reacted. However, it didn't send out any special waves to scan Xiaolingyu's body. The iron coffin quickly shrank and turned back into a black iron armor. It automatically put on Xiaolingyu's hand. Chapter 770. Xiaolingyu stood where the demon sealing tower used to be, wearing a heavy and sturdy dark iron armor and holding a 9-story tower. With a thought, Yan Tianzi and Fudi were released. The primal chaos spectrum also returned to Xiaolingyu's body. Xiaolingyu looked at the vast land of Tongtian Holy Island and felt like he could finally see the light of day again. Since the demon sealing tower was such an important place, there were naturally many people from various factions keeping an eye on it. When the demon sealing tower suddenly disappeared, those cultivators came to check it out. When they saw Xiaolingyu, their expressions changed drastically. Then, they turned around and left without hesitation, taking out their communication bead. "By the way, Brother Xiao, there's something you might not know. Your Hua men have been annihilated. Most of the Hua men cultivators have left the Hua men, and some of them were killed. Even the powerhouses of your Earth lineage have suffered heavy losses. The Sacred Army and other factions have never stopped hunting them down." Yan Tianzi continued, "Actually, I risked my life to save you on the 9th floor of the demon sealing tower to protect myself. My name is also on the Sacred Army's wanted list." "These cultivators are really despicable." Xiaolingyu's expression darkened, and his tone was filled with murderous intent. Xiaolingyu originally had no intention of becoming enemies with the Sacred Army and other factions of Tongtian Holy Island, but they had gone too far. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a ray of light suddenly descended from the sky and enveloped Fudi's entire body. Under Xiaolingyu and Yan Tianzi's surprised gaze, Fudi was slowly pulled up by the ray of light and disappeared in the sky not long after. "It ascended just like that?" Xiaolingyu was a little surprised, but more than that, he was reluctant to part with it. "It already has the strength of the immortal realm. If it wasn't on the 9th floor of the demon sealing tower, it would have ascended long ago," Yan Tianzi explained after recovering from his shock. "It's good that it ascended. It saves me a lot of trouble," Xiaolingyu said with a complicated expression. "I still think that Brother Xiao should have killed him on the 9th floor of the demon sealing tower," Yan Tianzi said. It ascended to the world of immortals, and it's hard to say whether I'll be able to survive the immortal tribulation. Why make things difficult for it?" Xiaolingyu smiled bitterly. "Brother, the news of you coming out must have spread. You'll probably be surrounded by a large group of experts." Yan Tianzi reminded him out of goodwill. "Humph. Even if they don't come looking for me, I will go look for them," Xiaolingyu said and brought Yan Tianzi into the chaos spectrum. He wanted to use the chaos spectrum's 10,000 times faster time flow to recover. Tens of millions of years had passed in the outside world, but hundreds of billions of years had passed in the primal chaos spectrum. The girls, Sky-Devouring Dragon, and Lil Bing were now standing at the peak of the late stage of Tongtian. Moreover, after such a long time, everyone had also used the long years of comprehension to find their own method to advance to the immortal realm. After all, the cultivation method they cultivated was not as special as the 9 revolutions chaos formula, so it was easier to extend it. Before and after the Hua Men's alliance was established, Xiao Lingyu and Ling had collected countless treasures left behind by the seniors of the Tongtian Sacred Island. They had also obtained countless powerful cultivation techniques and cultivation experiences left behind by the seniors of the Tongtian Sacred Island. These provided a lot of reference and guidance for everyone. It was the most crucial support for everyone to find the way to reach the immortal realm. However, in the chaos spectrum, no one could touch the immortal realm. They had to go out and cultivate for a period of time. However, in this way, everyone would have to face the immortal tribulation very soon. Furthermore, the immortal tribulation was so abnormal. This was what Xiao Lingyu was very worried about. After recovering from his injuries, Xiao Lingyu left the chaos spectrum alone and headed towards the sacred mountain. The news that the Lord of the Hua Men had subdued the demon sealing tower quickly spread throughout the Tongtian Sacred Island. The large and small forces that had previously attacked the Hua Men were all terrified. When the Sacred Army had organized everyone to besiege the Hua Men and hunt down the cultivators on Earth, the Sacred Army had patted his chest and assured everyone that the Lord of the Hua Men, Xiao Lingyu, had fallen on the 9th floor of the demon sealing tower, and there was no possibility of him appearing again. That was why everyone's actions were so united and resolute. However, not only had the Lord of the Hua Men appeared now, but he had also subdued the demon sealing tower. The Sacred Army and other powerful forces might not be afraid of the Lord of the Hua Men's revenge, but other weaker small and medium-sized forces were simply unable to face the Lord of the Hua Men, even if he was alone. The news of Xiao Lingyu's appearance had also reached the ears of the Peacock Bright Monarch and other powerhouses on Earth, who had yet to be besieged. They took advantage of the fear of the large and small forces to quickly gather around Xiao Lingyu. The Peacock Bright Monarch, Shen Gongbao, Jiang Shang, Qi Yu, Ho Yi, and Chang Yi. More and more powerhouses from Earth gathered around Xiao Lingyu, but under Xiao Lingyu's lead, they headed towards the Sacred Mountain. Even though the Sacred Army was powerful, the Sacred Army also frowned when they heard that Xiao Lingyu was heading towards the Sacred Mountain. There's nothing to be afraid of. Since he's still on the Tongtian Sacred Island, it means that he hasn't reached the immortal realm. As long as he hasn't reached the immortal realm, how can he face thousands of Tongtian powerhouses and top masters like us? The Shaman King was very calm. As the powerhouses from Earth gathered around Xiao Lingyu, many of the large and small forces that had participated in the siege of the Hua Men and the pursuit of the cultivators from Earth also constantly moved closer to the Sacred Mountain. They knew very well that they would only be killed by the master of the Hua Men if they were on the same front as the Sacred Army. After 1,000 years, Xiao Lingyu was only 10,000 kilometers away from the Sacred Mountain. Although he was alone, he gave the Sacred Army a sense of urgency as if an army was pressing down on them. Currently, hundreds of thousands of cultivators had gathered on the Sacred Mountain, including nearly 3,000 Tongtian powerhouses and countless holy god cultivators. Xiao Lingyu was still approaching the Sacred Mountain with an unparalleled aura that said, "Even if there are thousands of troops and horses, I will go alone." Countless neutral cultivators on the Tongtian Sacred Island were surprised and impressed. The Sacred Army and many other large and small forces gathered near the Sacred Mountain. They were ready for battle and had set up an extremely powerful formation to wait for Xiao Lingyu. Xiao Lingyu's formation Dao cultivation base was extremely high. Naturally, he could sense the existence of the formation, which was why he stopped when he was still 1,000 kilometers away from the Sacred Mountain. "Who dares to come out and fight me?" Standing on the peak of a small mountain, Xiao Lingyu's voice shook the mountains and traveled thousands of kilometers. There were countless powerhouses around the Sacred Mountain, including top powerhouses like Saber 9, the Shaman King, and the Honorable of All Saints. However, not a single cultivator dared to step out and fight him. "Who dares to come out and fight me? Who dares to come out and fight me? Who dares to?" Xiao Lingyu's shout was like a thunderclap that reverberated between heaven and earth. Every time he shouted, the powerhouses standing around the sacred mountain would feel their hearts tremble. His voice was like the ringing of a bell that shook their souls. "I'll go and meet him." The honorable of all saints finally could not take it anymore. This was the first time in countless years that a cultivator dared to challenge the sacred mountain. "Let's go together," the Shaman King said. "There's no need to fight him one-on-one. Otherwise, why would we gather so many powerhouses here?" Saber 9 said with a nod. "As long as we can kill the enemy, it's fine no matter what strategy we use. After all, this is a battle of life and death, not a spar," the Holy Army's number 2 powerhouse said. Thus, the 4 top powerhouses of Skirich Holy Island flew through the formation together and arrived at the mountain where Xiaolingyu was. When enemies met, there was no need for idle chatter. The 4 top powerhouses stood in 4 different directions and surrounded the small mountain. Seeing the 4 top powerhouses coming together, Xiaolingyu was not afraid at all. Instead, a mocking smirk appeared at the corners of his lips. The fact that they had come together proved that they were afraid. As soon as the encirclement was formed, dozens of destructive sword gleams formed above Saber 9's head. The 2 Holy Army powerhouses each straightened their golden spears, and the Shaman King was already enveloped in a bloody mist. Naturally, Xiaolingyu would not sit around and wait for his opponents to attack. He stomped his feet on the ground and shot out like an iron arrow released from a bow. For countless years after the ancient times, there was almost no precedent in the history of Skirich Holy Island for someone to challenge 4 top powerhouses single-handedly. Just in time. Seeing that Xiaolingyu was the first to charge at him, the Holy Lord shook his spear and met the attack head-on. The Holy Lord was extremely fast, and his cultivation level was high as well. Therefore, his golden spear pierced Xiaolingyu's shoulder in the next second. Clang! There was a sharp sound as the golden spear's spearhead created sparks on the metal armor. Although it was a top-tier heavenly spirit treasure, the golden spear could not pierce through the metal armor at all. Xiaolingyu smiled ferociously and grabbed the spear's shaft. The vertical eye between his brows opened immediately, and a destructive beam of bloody light shot out. The Holy Lord knew how powerful the heavenly eye was, so he immediately dodged to one side. However, his golden spear was currently in Xiaolingyu's hands. If he had tried to snatch his spear back earlier, he would have been hit by the destructive beam of bloody light. After weighing the pros and cons, he could only give up on his prized treasure. At this moment, Saber 9's dozens of destructive sword gleams, the Shaman King's sorcery, and the Holy Army No. 2's spear gleams all struck Xiaolingyu at the same time. However, all they did was send Xiaolingyu flying far away. They did not even scratch his skin. With such a battle armor forged from chaotic dark iron, Xiaolingyu could completely ignore even the attacks of top powerhouses. He had dared to come alone because of the dark iron battle armor's invincible defense. The 10,000 Saints' Venerable's expression was extremely ugly. They had only exchanged a single blow, and they had 4 top experts on their side while the other party only had 1 person. However, his own treasure had been snatched away, and the other party was unscathed. This was not as simple as losing face. Even though the Holy Lord tried his best to communicate with his treasure with his mind, the golden spear was full of spirituality. It kept shaking in Xiaolingyu's hands, as if it was trying its best to break free. "Haha! The Holy Lord's treasure is so powerful. Even I'm having trouble controlling it." Xiaolingyu laughed wantonly as he withstood the attacks of the 4 top powerhouses. His laughter sounded piercing and full of sarcasm to the enemy's ears. "Let's retreat. We can't break through his defense at all." Saber 9 had already flown toward the holy mountain as he spoke. Although the Holy Lord was reluctant, he had no choice but to retreat for now. "Haha, you're just a bunch of people who bully the weak. I'd like to see how your formation compares to my 10-terminal formation." Just like that, Xiaolingyu grasped the golden spear of the sovereign of all holies and slowly walked into the grand array. Chapter 771. This brat is extremely arrogant. How dare he barge into the formation alone? The Shaman King exclaimed after returning to the sacred mountain. He has the right to be arrogant. That battle armor forged from chaos dark iron makes his defense practically invincible. This formation can't do anything to him. Saber 9 shook his head with a wry smile. This was the first time he had seen a cultivator who could take his destructive sword gleam head-on and emerge unscathed. With his defense and the force of impact, this formation might not be able to threaten him, the Honorable Holiness said. That's not necessarily true. His physical defense is high, but that doesn't mean his spiritual defense is high as well. After all, he's not an immortal-level powerhouse. If the four of us top powerhouses join forces, along with thousands of immortal masters and hundreds of thousands of holy god-stage cultivators, he might not be able to withstand our spiritual attacks, the Shaman King said with narrowed eyes. We can try that, Saber 9 agreed. I happen to know a technique that can gather everyone's spiritual attacks and launch them together. However, there might be sacrifices, the Shaman King said with a wicked smile. What kind of technique? What kind of sacrifice? The Honorable Holiness asked with a frown. Witchcraft incantation, soul destruction technique. As for the sacrifices, it won't be too great. I estimate that 200 to 300 immortal masters and tens of thousands of holy god-stage cultivators will be drained of their essence and blood, the Shaman King said nonchalantly. Well, the Honorable Holiness hesitated. This brat is a great threat. We'll do whatever it takes to get rid of him, the Holy Army No. 2 powerhouse said calmly. With his invincible defense, we'll only have a chance of killing him with a spiritual attack. Otherwise, even if he can't do anything to us now, I'm afraid we won't have it easy when his ability improves a little more, Saber 9 added. The Honorable Holiness recalled that his golden spear was still in Saber 9's hands, as well as the latter's mockery earlier. He finally nodded and said, I'll make the arrangements. Although Xiaolingyu's defense was invincible and he was not afraid of the formation's attacks, it would still take some time for him to break this formation. While he was shuttling back and forth in the array formation, the sacred mountain also began to set up the array formation. Not long after, 300 omnipotent powerhouses and 100,000 saint god stage cultivators were selected by the sovereign of all holies. Under the guidance of the Shaman King, they arranged themselves in a special formation. The other experts gathered around the sacred mountain surrounded the special formation. Everyone sat cross-legged and quietly adjusted their state of mind. The Shaman Kings, on the other hand, used shaman blood to draw a formation diagram in the middle of the formation. Gradually, a sinister formation was formed by the sacred deities and ingress cultivators. It's done. Open a small door in the formation and let him come this way. The Shaman King clapped his hands and said to the Honorable 10,000 holies. The 10,000 saints sovereign did as he was told. He formed a hand seal and sent it into the grand formation that surrounded the sacred mountain, causing the formation to surge. Xiaolingyu, who had a deep understanding of the Tao of formations, immediately sensed the opening of a path in the formation. He only used 10 breaths of time to rush out of the path. As soon as he came out, he saw a demonic radiance flash in front of him, followed by a series of explosions. To everyone's astonishment, the 300 omnipotent powerhouses and 100,000 saint god stage cultivators exploded at the same time. Clouds of blood quickly gathered together. At this moment, the Shaman King waved his hand and shot out a flame, igniting the blood mist that was like a red cloud. With shaman blood as the guide, soul-extinguishing fire, rise. The Shaman King chanted an incantation, and the experts gathered around the sacred mountain began to pour their soul power into the ignited cloud of blood. In an instant, A vast and mighty pressure that shook the heavens acted on Xiaolingyu. Before Xiaolingyu could react, he was already enveloped by the ignited blood fog. Subsequently, wave after wave of incomparably powerful spiritual attacks began to surge towards him. Dark green flames burned around Xiaolingyu's body, but he felt a bone-chilling cold. His golden soul pearl was even trembling. It wasn't that the dark steel battle armor didn't have the ability to defend against soul attacks, but with so many experts using secret techniques to launch soul attacks, even if the dark steel battle armor helped Xiaolingyu mitigate most of the power, Xiaolingyu couldn't withstand the remaining power. If not for the dark steel battle armor's help, Xiaolingyu's golden soul pearl would have collapsed in an instant. At this moment, Xiaolingyu was actually unable to connect with the primal chaos spectrum. However, just as he was about to collapse, the demon sealing tower automatically appeared and took him into the starry space on the 9th floor. The demon sealing tower's main body stood at the foot of the sacred mountain, replacing Xiaolingyu to be enveloped by the burning cloud of blood. After being in a daze for a while in the starry space on the 9th floor of the demon sealing tower, Xiaolingyu gradually recovered and couldn't help but feel a little scared. "Humph. I'd like to see how many times you can launch such a secret technique," Xiaolingyu said with a gloomy face. Every time the Shaman King's secret technique was activated, 100,000 sacred gods and 300 omnipotent experts had to sacrifice. Although there were countless omnipotent sacred island experts gathered around the sacred mountain, they couldn't last for long. Most importantly, when the Honorable of all Saints mobilized the 100,000 sacred gods and 300 omnipotent experts, he didn't tell them that they would lose their lives. However, now that the truth was in front of everyone's eyes, it wouldn't be easy for him to mobilize so many experts to sacrifice their lives. However, when Xiaolingyu recovered and had the demon sealing pagoda send him out, the dark green blood flames that had originally disappeared actually gushed out from the Shaman King's sleeves, instantly enveloping Xiaolingyu without the slightest decrease in power. The demon sealing tower automatically activated its power again and took Xiaolingyu into the starry space on the 9th floor. It seemed that after the secret technique was used, it could be retracted and used freely by the Shaman King. This gave Xiaolingyu a headache. Xiaolingyu entered the chaos spectrum and asked the Peacock Bright Monarch and other experts on Earth if there was a way to break the Shaman King's secret technique. That secret technique gathered too much soul power. It shouldn't be possible to break it under immortality. The knowledgeable Peacock Bright Monarch shook his head and said, "The other experts on Earth were also at their wits' end and didn't know how to break it. Now that Brother Xiao has cultivated his technique to the peak, if he can break through, with the help of the demon sealing tower, he can dominate omnipotent Sacred Island and be invincible." Jiang Shang reminded Xiaolingyu, "The peak of my 9-revolution chaos formula is the limit. If I want to break through, it's harder than ascending to heaven. I've studied it for years and learned from the experiences left behind by countless seniors, but I still haven't found a reliable way to break through." Xiaolingyu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Haha, there's no reliable cultivation method in this world. Any cultivation is risky and has the possibility of failure." The Peacock Bright Monarch laughed. Xiaolingyu also understood this, but he had done his best to prepare for the breakthrough so many times. However, he didn't know what to prepare this time, which made him feel lost. When his interest waned, Xiaolingyu went to the light screen again. The 9-revolution chaos formula should be created by the ancestor of his lineage by comprehending the light screens in the chaos spectrum. The continuation of this technique might rely on these light screens. However, no matter how he looked at it, Xiaolingyu felt that he could at most comprehend the realm of chaos from the light screen. He couldn't obtain the guidance to create the 10-revolution formula with just these light screens. There should be other light screens in this chaos spectrum, right? Xiaolingyu couldn't help but guess after sitting in front of the light screen for tens of thousands of years without gaining anything. However, He and his friends and family had stayed in the chaos spectrum for countless years and almost went through the entire void, but they still couldn't find any other light screens. This light screen shows the cultivation of chaos. Now that I've completed this cultivation, there should be a new world after it. At the thought of this, Xiaolingyu began to use all kinds of methods to blast open the light screen. He even used the heavenly eye of destruction, but he could only make it fluctuate violently and couldn't open it. He felt that it wasn't that his attack wasn't strong enough, but that he didn't find the right path. After pondering for a long time, he left the chaos spectrum and returned to the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. He then began to draw the natural power of this world into his body. He fused his power with the natural power of heaven and earth, then burned it with the chaos true fire to refine chaos origin power. After thousands of years, Xiaolingyu brought a drop of chaos origin power back into the chaos spectrum and arrived in front of the light screen again. After hesitating for a while, he first sent his friends and family out of the chaos spectrum and asked them to wait in the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. Then, he made up his mind and blasted the chaos origin power toward the light screen. Just as the chaos origin power touched the light screen, he detonated the chaos origin power. The explosive power of the chaos origin power was truly destructive. It was energy that could form a new world. After the explosion, the light screen still wasn't torn apart, but the power of the chaos origin power explosion was all absorbed by the light screen. Then, a new world began to naturally form in the light screen. Chaos was Taiji. Taiji gave birth to Yin and Yang gave birth to the 4 divisions. All kinds of mysterious chaos laws began to gradually appear on the light screen. When the light screen stopped fluctuating, all the scenes disappeared, and the 8 words disappeared. Instead, they were replaced by 5 big words: eternal life through creation. The new world or door that he imagined didn't appear. Instead, there were only these 5 big words. Eternal life through creation? What does that mean? While he was still in shock, the 5 big words had already disappeared, and the light screen slowly dissipated into nothingness. 10th Revolution Chaos Creation Stage? Creation of nature? Using chaos origin power to form nature and form a world. This is the chaos self stage. Then, the chaos creation stage should be to create this world. How do I create this world? Is it all based on my own will? Am I the master of my world? Chapter 772. The cultivation of the inner world is only one aspect. There's also the improvement of one's skills and soul realm. The improvement of skills should be to convert all the chaos divine power in one's body into chaos origin power. The improvement of one's soul realm should be to master space and time on the basis of comprehending the natural laws of heaven and earth. Xiaolingyu began to meditate and gradually made some headway. Although there were only 5 words on the light screen earlier, they provided Xiaolingyu with a lot of information. Although his comprehension was average, at least he was now standing at an extremely high level. Some things could be enlightened with just a little guidance. With a clear direction, cultivation naturally became easier. The only difficulty in advancing to the 10th transformation was the comprehension and mastery of the temporal laws. The laws of space were similarly broad and profound. But at the very least, Xiaolingyu could clearly sense its existence. Moreover, he had long since been able to utilize it. Even ordinary cultivators would be able to grasp a bit of this, let alone Xiaolingyu. However, the law of time was more profound. Moreover, it was an invisible existence. It always surrounded everyone, but it could not be touched. Where does the past begin, and where does the future end? For a world, is the beginning of time the moment the world is formed? Is the end of time the moment the world is destroyed? The past, present, and future should be the 3 elements that make up time. They are born with chaos and destroyed with chaos. The profound temporal laws gave Xiaolingyu a headache. However, He gradually realized that he could deduce the temporal laws by using the natural laws of heaven and earth and chaos. The temporal laws existed because of chaos and multiplied. By mastering chaos, one could reverse time. The natural powers of heaven and earth nurtured by chaos could overturn heaven and earth and destroy time and space. The temporal laws of his inner world were formed by his thoughts. He did not need to control the external time and space. He could use his inner world to fight against it and change it. While Xiaolingyu was comprehending the laws of time, time passed quietly. Xiaolingyu had entered a state of cultivation. Close to 1,000,000 years had passed, and another major event had taken place on the Heavenly Saint Island. That was the ninth saber, who had been at the peak of the late stage of the Heavenly Saint Island for many years, had finally comprehended the ninth level of the Heavenly Sword technique and passed through the longevity tribulation, successfully ascending to the longevity realm. This was a good thing for Xiaolingyu because it meant that he had one less strong enemy. However, this was also a bad thing because if Xiaolingyu wanted to seek revenge on Saber 9, she would have to go to the immortal realm to look for him. Several million years later, Xiaolingyu finally stopped cultivating. Clad in dark steel battle armor, he once again stood at the foot of the sacred mountain, facing countless experts of the sacred army. Humph! He was finally out. If I don't come out now, I will ascend to the world of immortals. The Shaman King appeared to be very confident. With a wave of his sleeve, the burning blood mist surged forward with an incomparably vast soul attack. Child's play. Xiaolingyu's lips curled into a disdainful smile. An even more powerful soul aura surged out of his body. In an instant, it was like a storm, extinguishing the dark green flames of the blood mist and easily dispersing the blood mist. How is this possible? The Shaman King turned pale with fright. His eyes widened in disbelief. Everyone attacked together. With the honorable 10,000 holies taking the lead, all the powerhouses attacked together. The sky was filled with flowing light, like a gorgeous galaxy surging through a broken dam. Stop! Xiaolingyu's voice was like thunder. With a wave of his hand, the space-time in front of him suddenly distorted. The gorgeous galaxy that was about to reach him immediately stopped moving. With another wave of his hand, the attacks launched by countless cultivators exploded like fireworks. However, they only bloomed with a gorgeous radiance, but there was no sound at all. Oh no, he has entered the longevity realm. The Honorable 10,000 Holies expression was even more interesting than the Shaman King's. However, he had guessed wrong. Xiaolingyu had not entered the longevity realm, but the chaotic creation stage of the 10th cycle. However, the chaotic creation stage was not weaker than the longevity realm. Moreover, the strength of the cultivators who had just entered the longevity realm was far superior. It's time for you to pay the price for your stupidity. Xiaolingyu's indifferent words were like a judgment. A circle of Dharma seals formed completely from the chaotic force formed at Xiaolingyu's fingertip. The terrifying power contained in it caused the sky to lose its color and the earth to tremble. Even the incomparably huge sacred mountain was trembling at this moment. The Shaman King's expression changed drastically. He immediately turned into a blood mist and shot toward the sky like a blood-red rainbow. It's too late. Xiaolingyu raised his hand and sent out the chaotic seal that he had prepared. Although the Shaman King's speed was fast, he was still one level lower than Xiaolingyu in terms of cultivation. Xiaolingyu's attack could firmly lock onto him. Boom! The Shaman King used this extremely short period of time to escape close to 100 miles away. However, he was still caught up by the chaotic seal. The blood-red rainbow, he turned into exploded together with the chaotic seal. Xiaolingyu did not need to look carefully to know that the Shaman King had fallen. After all, the chaotic seal was formed from the chaotic force. Its explosive power was incomparably violent. In an instant, everything around the sacred mountain was razed to the ground. The hundreds of thousands of Sacred Army soldiers, who were prepared to deal with Xiao Lingyu, were annihilated in an instant. Even the incomparably huge Sacred Mountain, which was known as the #1 peak in the God realm, showed signs of collapsing. The Shaman King's tragic death so easily caused the Sacred Army experts to feel despair. For the first time, the Honorable of 10,000 Holies felt powerless and weak. "I'll return your golden spear to you." Xiao Lingyu shot a golden light at the Honorable of 10,000 Holies. That golden light was the top-grade divine spiritual treasure golden spear. It was also the treasure that the Honorable of 10,000 Holies was proud of. After receiving his golden spear, the Honorable of 10,000 Holies felt a bit more heroic. As the leader of a large force, he could not flee in panic like the Shaman King. Even if he had to die in battle. "Fight!" the Honorable of 10,000 Holies roared. He once again raised his golden spear and charged at the expert who was wearing iron armor but had a calm expression. Unfortunately, he only left behind a tragic and desolate silhouette for everyone. The golden spear that he had just recovered was once again easily grabbed by his opponent, and then broken by his opponent. He wanted to retreat in fear, but found that he had already been firmly imprisoned by an invisible mighty force. Then, under his terrified gaze, the spearhead of his golden spear ruthlessly pierced through his battle armor and pierced through his body. Another top-grade expert had fallen. Similarly, he had been killed in a single move. Anyone could see that Xiao Lingyu had completely surpassed the heavenly connection realm, and had reached a whole new realm. And this new realm was actually so powerful. It was so powerful that it made people yearn for it. At the same time, they also felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. The top-grade experts, who were usually high and mighty on the Heavenly Connection Sacred Island, were actually unable to resist at all. "Kill yourself," Xiao Lingyu said coldly to the second-grade expert of the Sacred Army. That old man in golden armor had also attacked the Hua men and participated in the pursuit of the experts from Earth. He was not an innocent person. The old man smiled. He picked up the Honorable of 10,000 Holies and then exploded with a loud bang. He did not want his body to be unable to rest after death, so he chose to destroy his body and soul. At this time, there were still many experts near the Sacred Mountain. They were completely stunned. In the blink of an eye, the top-grade experts that they relied on had all fallen. What else could they hope for? "You are not innocent either. The Sacred Army has killed the Hua men and the people from Earth. You are either the executioners or the accomplices of the evildoers. You all deserve to die." The mighty power of heaven and earth gushed out from his body, covering the sky and rolling out in all directions. The natural laws of heaven and earth were stirred wantonly, and space and time were also distorted. Under such a heaven-defying divine ability, the bodies of cultivators were crushed and exploded one after another. The Sacred Mountain had become a slaughterhouse at this moment. Even the top-grade experts were unable to resist, let alone these ordinary cultivators. The gap between the chaotic 10th cycle and the heavenly connection realm was not something that could be made up for by numbers. No matter how many people there were, it would not be enough. In the blink of an eye, the originally lively Sacred Mountain became dead silent. Only Xiao Lingyu, who was wearing the black iron battle armor, was standing alone in midair. A general success was built on the bones of 10,000. Since the beginning of Xiao Lingyu's cultivation, he rarely had a peaceful day. He had experienced countless killings and killed countless cultivators. Even now, he could not feel the slightest bit of emotion, even though he had slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people with a wave of his hand. Perhaps it was because his cultivation level had increased, or because he had not killed all the enemies yet, but he did not feel much excitement after taking his revenge. In fact, even if he truly stood at the top of the heavenly realm and heavenly connection Sacred Island, Xiao Lingyu felt that his journey seemed to have just begun. In the past, he should have been in someone else's trap, a chess piece of someone else. The path from now on might be the path that truly belonged to him. He wanted to go to the realm of longevity and eliminate Saber-9, the fish that had escaped the net. He wanted to see which Almighty was using him, and who was the one who wanted to kill him after using him. After that, he asked the powerhouses from Earth to come out of the chaotic spectrum. At this point, there was no longer any powerhouse or force that could threaten the safety of the cultivators from Earth. The sacred mountain had not collapsed. The jasper pool at the top of the mountain still existed, and the water in the jasper pool was still pure. The cultivators from Earth did not go anywhere else. They set up a new base on the sacred mountain that originally belonged to the sacred army. With the sacred mountain as the foundation for their cultivation, and with the help of the jasper pool, they would be able to become as powerful as the sacred army for a long time, unless another powerful being like Xiaolingyu appeared in the future. Now that Xiaolingyu was invincible in the heavenly realm and heavenly connection sacred island, there was only one obstacle and danger in front of him: the longevity tribulation. Xiaolingyu's heavenly tribulations in the past were different from those of ordinary cultivators. This time it was probably the same. When he had just finished his cultivation and reappeared, he had already felt the might of the heavenly tribulation locking onto him. Soon, his own longevity tribulation would come. Only after passing the longevity tribulation would one become a true immortal realm powerhouse, and only then could one enter the realm of longevity. Chapter 773. Before the immortal tribulation arrived, his disciple Yi Qiu had already arrived at the Tongtian Holy Island. When he heard from his master about the annihilation of the narrow divinity world's Huamen, he was very surprised. While secretly rejoicing, he thanked Yan Tianzi. After settling the situation at Heavenly Saint Island, Xiaolingyu went to the narrow sense of the God realm before he ascended. With his current speed, it would only take him a few hundred years to reach the narrow sense of the God realm from Heavenly Saint Island. It wasn't difficult for Xiaolingyu to rebuild the Huamen in the narrow sense of the God realm. Although there weren't many Huamen left in the narrow sense of the God realm, there were still some Huamen who survived because they weren't in the camp when the sacred army massacred them. There were also some cultivators from the Earth lineage who avoided the disaster for various reasons. Xiaolingyu used them as a foundation to increase their strength and personally set up a defensive formation for the new Huamen camp. With Xiaolingyu's current cultivation level and strength, even those who had just ascended to the immortal realm wouldn't be able to break through the formation he set up. After staying in the narrow sense of the God realm for a while, Xiaolingyu found out that his sworn brother, Gu Yunfei, had died under the sacred army's butcher's knife. He was furious about this, but there was nothing he could do. His old friend was gone. Although he stood at the top of the God realm, he didn't have the ability to revive a cultivator whose body and soul had been destroyed. After setting up the Huamen in the narrow sense of the God realm, he personally went to the immortal realm through the space passage. The stronger one's cultivation was, the more difficult it was to descend. This was because the repulsive force in the lower realm was stronger. No matter what cultivation level one was in, as long as one's cultivation level or combat strength exceeded the supremacy of the three realms by too much, they would be directly transported to the God realm by the three realms space. Therefore, the sacred army only sent some divine monarch cultivators to the lower realm. After all, any cultivator would have the same effect. Originally, when a supreme expert like Xiaolingyu came down to the lower realm, he would almost be rejected by the natural forces of the lower realm. However, he had a world in his body after all. He used one world to fight another world, so the time and space of the lower realm could not reject him. Back then, the sacred army had only sent a small number of experts to the lower realm. They had only destroyed the base of the Hua men and massacred a large number of Hua men's higher-ups and elite experts. They had not wiped out the cultivators of the Earth lineage. It was impossible for them to wipe out the cultivators of the Earth lineage. After all, the Hua men cultivators were scattered throughout the immortal realm. It was extremely difficult to find all of them. Furthermore, the sacred army of the lower realm would also be unable to resist the resistance of the Hua men cultivators and unleash power that exceeded the supremacy level. Thus, they would be expelled to the heavenly realm and would be unable to deal a devastating blow to the Hua men and the cultivators of the Earth lineage. As the founder of the Hua men, Xiao Lingyu's image was naturally deeply engraved in the hearts of the Hua men cultivators. He could also easily reorganize the Hua men of the immortal realm if he displayed some more powerful divine abilities. Originally, Xiao Lingyu had no intention of going to the cultivation realm. After all, there were not many descendants of Earth there. However, he still went down to the lower realm. He went down to the cultivation realm to see the Shuntian Academy and also to visit Earth. The Shuntian Academy had done well. Now, the cultivation philosophy of Xuantian's mandate had been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. It was accepted and recited by the majority of the cultivators of the cultivation realm. Xiao Lingyu did not disturb the Shuntian Academy and the cultivation realm. He continued to use the greater teleportation. Soon, he found the place where he was born, Earth. To Xiao Lingyu's surprise, after countless years, Earth had regained its vitality. The distance between the Sun and Earth was also the same as before, providing Earth with the appropriate amount of light and heat. Xiao Lingyu felt that the reason for this should be because of the arrangement made by the ancient masters of Earth. He used his divine will to envelop Earth and indeed felt the remnant fluctuations of the array. That array might not be very powerful, but it was enough for the environment of the cultivation realm. Although Earth was still there, his old friends had already disappeared. There was no trace of the past. After all, it had been too long. Xiao Lingyu wandered around the brand new Earth for a while before he finally left the world of cultivation, feeling dispirited. After returning to the sacred mountain of the heavenly sacred island in the heavenly realm, Xiao Lingyu asked his relatives and friends, who were about to face the immortal tribulation, to wash their bodies in the jade pool one by one. This could increase their chances of success. Then, Xiao Lingyu began to set up the array. Chaotic 10th Revolution Realm was already comparable to a longevity realm expert. Setting up a formation with this realm, in addition to the fact that Xiao Lingyu had completely digested Liao Zhou's inheritance and became a formation Dao expert, the defensive formation he set up was naturally incomparably powerful. Moreover, in order to set up this array, Xiao Lingyu used almost all the resources he could borrow or snatch in his collection. This array could not be easily broken by a true immortal realm master. After all, the immortal tribulation of ordinary cultivators was to test the cultivators below the immortal realm. The greatest power of the immortal tribulation could not kill an immortal realm master. The power of the immortal tribulation should not be comparable to that of a true immortal realm master. Therefore, this array could completely withstand the bombardment of the immortal tribulation thunder. However, the last immortal tribulation thunder was something that the cultivator had to resist with his body. Any defensive means would be ignored. The test of the immortal tribulation thunder would directly affect the cultivator's body and soul. This was similar to the divine tribulation. What Xiao Lingyu could do was to prevent his friends and family from being injured by the previous immortal tribulation thunder, so that they could face the last immortal tribulation thunder in their peak state. With the help of this formation, Xiao Lingyu believed that his relatives and friends had more than a 70% chance of successfully transcending the tribulation. After all of them had cultivated for a very long time. In the chaos spectrum, they had all cultivated their cultivation techniques and realms to perfection, and all of them had touched the realm of immortality. Just as Xiao Lingyu finished setting up the array, an uninvited guest came to the side of the sacred mountain. The person who came was a woman wearing a white woolen coat. She had an extremely beautiful face like a white fox, peachy lips like a vermilion brush, a sharp chin, a fair and long neck, and a head of fine black hair draped over her shoulders, with a few strands fluttering in the wind. She was tall and had a graceful figure. She looked to be 18 years old, but there was a faint sadness lingering in her beautiful eyes. She gave off a feeling that she had experienced the vicissitudes of life. This array should be able to block 10 of my attacks. Looking at the array that was more than 1,000 miles away from the sacred mountain, the woman said with a calm expression. A moment later, Xiao Lingyu arrived in a flash. He looked at the woman and frowned. Immortal realm? Only an immortal level expert would be able to say something like that. It has been many years. You have now reached the peak of the God realm. You have 1 foot in the immortal realm, the woman said without changing her expression. Although I don't remember being an old acquaintance of yours, I do feel a sense of familiarity when I see you. As Xiao Lingyu spoke, he also tried to use his divine sense to spy on the woman. However, the other party's realm was not lower than his, so he could not see through her as he wished. Many years ago, in the Eastern Devil Cave, the 9-tailed devil fox. You killed it and took me away, the woman said simply. Haha, it really is an old acquaintance. Xiao Lingyu smiled bitterly and asked, Are you here for revenge? The woman nodded. The enmity of killing my mother is irreconcilable. I will repay the kindness of raising me with my life. If I can kill you today, then I will repay your kindness with my life. Xiao Lingyu shook his head and said, You should have just passed the immortal tribulation. Even if you are a heaven demon, you can only fight me to a draw at most. You can't kill me. However, the woman insisted. How do you know I can't if I haven't tried? Xiao Lingyu said curiously, Even if you are a heaven demon, your cultivation speed is really too fast. If I'm not wrong, you must have obtained many fortuitous encounters. The woman said calmly, You don't have to guess. I can tell you the truth. Although many fortuitous encounters came inexplicably, and it seemed like someone was helping me. But no matter what, even if I was used, at least I have the strength to take revenge. Xiao Lingyu shrugged and said, You have seen through it. That's right. After all, fox demons have always been intelligent and cunning. It is very difficult to use all of you without leaving any traces behind. Since you know you were used, why didn't you think of me being used as well? In reality, I am just a chess piece. The reason I killed your mother and saved you was because of someone else's arrangement, wasn't it? Xiao Lingyu could imagine that the 10-tailed fox was probably a backup plan to kill the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. He could not help but praise in his heart. The person who set this up really put a lot of thought into it. He even calculated so precisely that he and the 10-tailed fox would end up like this. The only thing he did not understand was that no matter what, he had helped the person who set up this trap to complete something. Why did the person set up a dead end for him? Could it be that he was afraid that he would be a threat to him? The person who set up this trap was able to set it up so precisely. How high was his cultivation level? Xiao Lingyu really could not think of how he could threaten him. I only look at the facts. I don't want to think so much. In any case, after I kill you, I will die too. If I die, there will be nothing left. The woman said stubbornly. Since that's the case, then let's try. Xiao Lingyu said indifferently. One move is enough. The woman instantly transformed into a fox demon that was as large as a small mountain. The fox demon was snow-white, but it had 12 tails. Waves of aura that could cause the world to lose its color and space to become chaotic surged out. The powerhouses who were cultivating at the holy mountain all felt a huge wave of pressure coming toward them. Their expressions changed drastically as they flew up high. However, they did not dare to get close. Although Xiao Yu did not want to fight with this pitiful fox demon, the other party was an immortal realm powerhouse after all. He still cautiously put on the black iron battle armor. At the same time, he raised his aura and secretly mobilized the natural power of heaven and earth in his inner world. When the aura was raised to a certain level, the fox demon's body swayed and turned into 12 fox demons that were also snow-white. However, these 12 fox demons only had one tail, but their aura was comparable to that of an immortal realm powerhouse. This was a kind of doppelganger ability. Those doppelgangers were not illusory illusions, but real existences. Chapter 774. The 12 immortal fox demons started to circle around Xiao Yu rapidly, causing Xiao Yu's vision to become blurry. Apart from the white shadows that drifted around, it was difficult for him to see the complete figure of a single fox demon. However, Xiao Yu was not in a hurry to make a move. He just narrowed his eyes and stood quietly on the spot. With the black iron armor made of chaotic black iron, Xiao Yu believed that even if the 12 fox demons attacked him together, they would not be able to do anything to him. The 12 fox demons did not attack together. After flying around for a while, they started to let out sharp whistles. The whistles could shatter metal and rock, and they surged through time and space with extremely powerful soul power attack. It seemed that the Heavenly Fox also knew that Xiao Yu's defense was too strong, so it wanted to use a soul attack to end the battle. "If you hide, I will kill all your friends and family." Such a powerful soul attack had already caused Xiao Yu's soul to tremble. The easiest way to deal with it now was to hide in the chaotic spectrum or the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, the Heavenly Fox's threatening words had already reached him. Xiao Yu revealed a bitter smile. Then, he resisted the surging soul power and started to move around quickly. Although the Heavenly Fox's soul attack was powerful, its cultivation level was not much higher than Xiao Yu's. Furthermore, the black iron armor also had a certain level of soul defense, so Xiao Yu's soul consciousness would not be shaken or knocked out in a short period of time. Every time he stopped, Xiao Yu would throw the array formation materials into the void. Due to the huge improvement in his strength, his method and speed of setting up the array formation had naturally increased by a lot. After a dozen breaths of time, Xiao Yu stopped again and yelled out loud, "Stop! Soul Seal!" Suddenly, waves of fog surged crazily, and time and space distorted. The Soul Seal formation set up by a chaotic 10th cycle cultivator was powerful enough to neutralize the opponent's surging soul power attack. The 12 heavenly foxes transformed into streaks of white light as they shuttled through the array formation. Their screeches grew sharper and sharper, but after being weakened by the soul sealing array, they were unable to harm Xiao Yu at all. The Heavenly Fox was obviously not proficient in the Tao of array formations, but she still continued to launch soul attacks while using her powerful strength to forcefully break through the array. However, the Heavenly Fox's speed of breaking the array was not fast, and it consumed a lot of energy. When she finally destroyed the array, Xiao Yu set up a new soul sealing array. Actually, Xiao Yu still had time to counterattack the Heavenly Fox, but he did not do so. Perhaps he felt guilty and wanted the Heavenly Fox to retreat. After breaking through 10 soul-sealing arrays in a row, the Heavenly Fox finally had no choice but to revert to its original form due to its exhaustion. A 12-tailed Heavenly Fox was panting as it stood on the peak of a small mountain. Then, it transformed into a beautiful woman wearing a white woolen coat. When the beautiful woman had arrived, she had a sad look on her face, but now there was disappointment and sorrow on her face. All these years, in order to quickly increase my strength, I did not have time to cultivate the Tao of array formations. I never thought that I would lose to the Tao of array formations today. Why didn't you attack? The woman smiled bitterly and continued to ask. I can't kill you. Even if you fight to the death, I won't have an easy time if I kill you. I will have to face the immortal tribulation in my peak state. Xiaolingyu replied indifferently. Sigh. Then I hope we can meet again in the immortal realm. The woman sighed, then quietly turned around and disappeared in a ray of white light. She said she would only use one move. She is quite stubborn. Xiaolingyu shook his head and smiled. His expression relaxed a lot. He could understand the heavenly fox's conflicted feelings. He also sympathized with the heavenly fox. If he was in the same situation as the heavenly fox, he would probably make the same choice as her. The hatred of killing her mother was irreconcilable. The kindness of raising her was repaid with her life. Probably in her opinion, if she could not kill Xiaolingyu, she would be killed by Xiaolingyu. She did not expect that Xiaolingyu would not fight to the death with her. Xiaolingyu did not like to leave any loose ends. However, it was really difficult for him to make a move on the heavenly fox. Back then, he was forced to make a move on the nine-tailed magic fox. Now that the nine-tailed magic fox's daughter came to take revenge, it was reasonable. Moreover, the nine-tailed magic fox had helped Xiaolingyu once. Of course, the most important thing was that the heavenly fox was obviously a person who valued friendship and righteousness. Her words just now made Xiaolingyu somewhat move. The heavenly fox left and would definitely not come back. She would soon ascend to the immortal realm. Xiaolingyu did not need to worry about her revenge. The person who set the trap didn't kill me. Don't let me find out who set the trap. Xiaolingyu returned to the sacred mountain and began to recuperate. Only a few hundred years had passed. Xiaolingyu's heavenly tribulation had yet to come, but the longevity tribulations of her relatives and friends had arrived almost at the same time. However, Xiaolingyu brought everyone into the primal chaos spectrum and then went out to transcend the tribulation one by one. He stood guard from afar. The defensive power of Xiaolingyu's formation was indeed strong. Even when the longevity tribulation's lightning struck it, it could only shake but not collapse. As for the last test, it was aimed at the realm of the body and soul. As long as one had touched the realm of immortality, as long as there was no knot in one's heart, they would be able to pass it. First, Miao Ying, Qing Xian, Anya, and Linger successfully passed the immortality tribulation. Then, it was Lil Bing and the Devourer of Heaven. There was nothing in their hearts that they couldn't let go of, and these powerhouses were not hurt by the lightning tribulation at all. The last test of the immortality tribulation's state of mind was not a big threat to them. When many cultivators faced the longevity tribulation, even if they could make it to the last step, most of them were seriously injured. Therefore, their success rate of transcending the tribulation was very low. Most of the cultivators would be annihilated by the lightning tribulation in front of them. They couldn't make it to the last step at all. After successfully transcending the tribulation cloud would cast a ray of light to envelop them, helping them to improve the realm of their soul and the quality of their body, giving them the capital to live forever. After cultivators reached the realm of immortality, there was no limit to their lifespan. As long as they didn't encounter any accidents or mishaps, they could live forever. Next, it was Jiang Lanyue, her sister, and Yueru's turn. The reason why she let them go last was that Xiaolingyu was worried about them. "I'll go first," Jiang Lanchang volunteered. To Xiaolingyu's surprise, Jiang Lanchang also passed the longevity tribulation very smoothly. Moreover, under the last test of the immortality tribulation, she didn't seem to have any inner demons that were difficult to resist. "What are you looking at? Do you really want something to happen to me so that you don't have to take responsibility?" Jiang Lanchang glared at Xiaolingyu. From this sentence, Xiaolingyu could guess that this little girl had calmly accepted the truth. She just pretended to hate her on the surface. "It's my turn." After Xiaolingyu strengthened and repaired the formation again, Yueru entered the formation and began to accept the test of the longevity tribulation. In fact, Yueru didn't have much of a knot in her heart. Although Qi Hongxian was her husband, he deliberately used her. She had already accepted Qi Hongshuan's death. The only thing that could affect her state of mind was her feelings for Xiaolingyu. However, she gradually let go of this after the evil demon Li Jia explained everything. Under the last test of the immortality tribulation, Yueru still encountered some problems. However, she was a person who had suffered a lot after all. The quality of her willpower was definitely far superior to that of ordinary cultivators. In addition, her cultivation technique had a miraculous effect on resisting inner demons. In the end, she passed the longevity tribulation without any mishaps. In the end, among all of Xiaolingyu's important relatives and friends, Jiang Lanyue was the only one left. Heartless man, after my sister passes the longevity tribulation, you have to hold a grand wedding for us, Jiang Lanchang said before Jiang Lanyue left the chaos spectrum. That's what I should do. Anya was the first to stand up and respond. The rest of the women also echoed in agreement. Your sister hasn't said that she wants to marry me yet. Xiaolingyu seemed to be depressed. You haven't asked. How do you know that my sister isn't willing? Jiang Lanchang objected. In fact, everyone knew that Jiang Lanchang's sudden suggestion was to untie the last knot in her sister Jiang Lanyue's heart. Xiaolingyu was very cooperative. He walked in front of Jiang Lanyue and grabbed Jiang Lanyue's hands. Staring into Jiang Lanyue's eyes, he asked, Actually, I've really liked you for a long time. Back in the ancient god's cave in the cultivation realm, the gap between us was too big. I didn't dare to say it out loud. However, today, in front of everyone, I want to ask you one thing. Do you like me? Will you marry me? This sentence made even Xiaolingyu's scalp tingle. The rest of the women were a little envious. Xiaolingyu had never said such tender words to them. Jiang Lanhua looked at everyone. Seeing that everyone, including her sister, was looking at her encouragingly, she felt a sweetness in her heart. After all, she really did have feelings for Xiaolingyu. Most women liked to listen to romantic words, especially from the man they liked for a long time. They would often remember and be happy for a long time. Even female cultivators who had touched the immortal realm were the same. Jiang Lanyue was originally worried that her sister would oppose it as strongly as before. However, seeing that her sister had already let go, she didn't have to be stubborn. I'll answer your question after I pass the longevity tribulation. Jiang Lanyue walked out of the chaos spectrum with a smile and entered the array to face the longevity tribulation. Perhaps it was because of Xiaolingyu's confession at the last moment, her sister's encouragement, or because her realm was high enough. Jiang Lanyue also faced the last longevity tribulation in her peak state under the protection of the array and successfully passed through it. Because he wasn't sure how crazy his longevity tribulation would be, Xiaolingyu fulfilled his promise and held a grand wedding for Lingyueru and Jiang Lanyue. The wedding was hosted by the Mahamayuri. Many strong people from Earth attended the ceremony as guests. Leaders of various forces who had already submitted came to congratulate them. Chapter 775. Yueru and Jiang Lanyue were both immortal realm experts who had passed the immortality tribulation. Moreover, they were both virgins. After spending a few days with them, Xiaolingyu had indeed improved a lot. Although Xiaolingyu was in the chaotic 10th cycle, he had not passed the immortality tribulation. He was not a true immortal realm expert. Therefore, Yueru and Jiang Lanyue were in a higher realm than him. This was also the key reason why he could improve so much. Even so, it was still unknown whether Xiaolingyu could pass his immortality tribulation. According to past experience, his heavenly tribulation was at least 3 times more powerful than that of ordinary cultivators. Xiaolingyu and his wives had lived a happy life for less than 500 years before his immortality tribulation finally arrived. A terrifying pressure descended from the sky. All living beings on heaven-reaching Saint Island felt this pressure. Countless living beings trembled at this moment. Even many bloodthirsty and violent fierce beasts prostrated themselves. Xiaolingyu chose to transcend his tribulation at a place 500,000 miles away from the sacred mountain, so as to not affect the cultivators of the sacred mountain. A vast and boundless tribulation cloud occupied the sky with a radius of millions of miles. It could be said that it covered the sky and covered the earth. As long as the cultivators on heaven-reaching Saint Island looked up, they could see the rolling and roaring tribulation cloud. The endless rumbling of the tribulation thunder shook the heavens and the earth. It was as if the heavens were roaring in anger. Just from the size of the tribulation cloud and the pressure that surged out, one could tell that Xiaolingyu's immortality tribulation was much more powerful than ordinary immortality tribulations. Xiaolingyu could easily block the ordinary immortality tribulation thunder with the formation. However, the formation would not be able to block all of the tribulation thunder that he was about to face this time. The tribulation cloud brewed for a few hours. Then, a purple-gold tribulation thunder came crashing down. However, what was surprising was that after this tribulation thunder, countless other purple-gold tribulation thunder came crashing down together. In an instant, the area within a radius of thousands of miles was turned into a sea of thunder. The raging lightning scattered all the energy fluctuations within several thousand kilometers, leaving only the endless, dense, and high-grade lightning energy. The thunder that came crashing down from the sky completely sealed off the area. Even the natural power of heaven and earth and the space-time waves were distorted. Xiaolingyu had no way of dodging such a dense bombardment of lightning. He didn't try to dodge either. The purple-gold lightning struck his dark steel battle armor, but it only produced terrifying electric arcs. It couldn't penetrate the dark steel battle armor's defense, much less cause any damage to Xiaolingyu. The tribulation thunder. Black and white tribulation thunder did not give Xiaolingyu's time to cultivate. Tribulation thunder. And tribulation thunder did. Black tribulation thunder did not give him any time to cultivate. Black and white tribulation thunder. These black and white tribulation thunder were clearly filled with the aura of chaos energy. Tribulation thunder. The black and white tribulation thunder came crashing down in large batches. The power of thunder was even more powerful. It almost sealed off everything within thousands of miles. Xiaolingyu also used his dark iron battle armor to withstand the tribulation thunder. The tribulation thunder could not hurt him. The black and white tribulation thunder lasted for 2 hours before stopping. The land was scorched and full of destruction. It didn't stop for even a moment. The 10-colored tribulation lightning fell like a lightning punishment. Although Xiaolingyu's dark steel battle armor could block it, it couldn't completely negate the power of lightning contained within. However, Xiaolingyu's physical defense was very strong. The lightning that entered his body through the dark steel battle armor only caused his aura to gradually become chaotic and his body to feel a little numb. However, the 10-colored tribulation thunder was already the most powerful tribulation thunder of an ordinary longevity tribulation. Ordinary cultivators who survived the 10-colored tribulation thunder would be considered to have reached the final step. As long as they survived the last tribulation thunder, they would be considered to have passed the longevity tribulation. However, after Xiaolingyu survived the 10-colored tribulation thunder, more white tribulation thunder came crashing down. The white tribulation thunder was bright and dazzling. They seemed to be falling randomly, but before they hit the ground, they suddenly gathered together and formed a lightning pillar that was dozens of feet wide. It hit Xiaolingyu's head fiercely. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion exploded above Xiaolingyu's head. Even with the defense of the black iron battle armor, Xiaolingyu was still dizzy from the explosion. His blood and qi were in turmoil as his body smashed into the ground, creating a large crater. Xiaolingyu crawled out of the hole and could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Before Xiaolingyu could recover, and before he could put up any defenses, more white tribulation thunder came crashing down. Fortunately, the dark iron battle armor's defense was extremely high, and Xiaolingyu's physical quality was not low. He was still able to withstand 18 strikes, but he was clearly injured. It would be fine if this white tribulation thunder was the last wave of tribulation thunder, but what made Xiaolingyu so angry that he almost cursed was that right after the white tribulation thunder ended, more black and gray tribulation thunder came crashing down from the sky. They carried a chaotic light and a dense aura of chaos origin force. Just like the white tribulation thunder, the black and gray tribulation thunder suddenly gathered together when they were hundreds of feet away from the ground. Then, they hit Xiaolingyu's head fiercely. What surprised Xiaolingyu was that the demon ceiling tower sensed his danger and took the initiative to put him into the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. What surprised him even more was that hiding in the demon ceiling tower could prevent the heavenly tribulation from locking on to the cultivator undergoing the tribulation. However, the black and gray tribulation thunder kept striking the demon ceiling tower. Even though the demon ceiling tower was made of chaotic dark iron, it could not withstand the black and gray tribulation thunder for long. The demon ceiling tower lasted for 4 hours before it exploded. Before the tribulation thunder, Xiaolingyu did not expect that the tribulation thunder of his longevity tribulation would be able to destroy a chaos ultimate treasure. Fortunately, although the demon ceiling tower was blasted into countless pieces, the black and gray tribulation thunder finally stopped. How is this a test? This is clearly an extermination. Xiaolingyu remembered that he had felt this when he was undergoing the tribulation thunder in the past. However, the heavenly tribulation this time made him feel even more terrified. Even the dark iron battle armor with invincible defense was destroyed. How was he going to deal with the next tribulation thunder? Could this chaotic longevity tribulation be the final trump card left behind by the person who set this up? Xiaolingyu could not help but wonder. He had fought so hard until now. Was his journey going to end under the tribulation thunder of the longevity tribulation? What made Xiaolingyu despair was that the black and gray tribulation thunder stopped. Then, a large number of tribulation thunder continuously struck down. These tribulation thunder were not of the same type. There were purple gold ones, 10-colored ones, black and white ones, bright white ones, and even black and gray ones. The tribulation thunder that previously appeared at the same time and struck down on Xiaolingyu's head. The other tribulation thunder were still fine. However, the bright white and gray tribulation thunder were not something that Xiaolingyu's physical body could withstand. He could only choose to hide in the primal chaos spectrum at this time. Hiding in the primal chaos spectrum was the same as hiding in the demon ceiling tower. The heavenly tribulation did not lose its sense of him. It seemed that once he began to undergo the tribulation thunder, he could no longer hide. The primal chaos spectrum could hide from ordinary cultivators. However, even the top experts of the God world had ways to find it. It was even more impossible for it to hide from the terrifying heavenly tribulation. Countless tribulation thunder crazily struck the primal chaos spectrum. After sacrificing another primal chaos supreme treasure, Xiaolingyu withstood the bombardment of this wave of tribulation thunder. When the primal chaos spectrum also collapsed, the tribulation thunder immediately ended. This tribulation thunder seems to be just to destroy these two primal chaos supreme treasures and not to kill me. Otherwise, why would the tribulation thunder stop every time the primal chaos supreme treasures are destroyed? Xiaolingyu thought strangely. After the two primal chaos supreme treasures were destroyed, the tribulation thunder finally gave Xiaolingyu some time to rest. It did not come down one wave after another. Xiaolingyu recuperated for almost a year. Then, from the tribulation clouds, a gray and hazy primal chaos tribulation thunder struck down. Xiaolingyu used a supreme grade divine spirit treasure to block it. However, the tribulation thunder ignored it. After passing through, it accurately struck Xiaolingyu's body. In an instant, Xiaolingyu had already determined that this was the last tribulation thunder, and it was to test his state of mind. Xiaolingyu had experience of being tortured by his inner demons for many years. In addition, he had comprehended the primal chaos supreme principles of heaven and earth all year round. His state of mind was absolutely fine. Moreover, he had no worries at all now. Moreover, his state of mind had long seen through everything. After easily passing the inner demon's tribulation, a ray of light shone down from the tribulation clouds, causing Xiaolingyu's realm to soar by a lot. As he did not know how the realms after the immortal realm were divided, Xiaolingyu did not know what level he was at now. In any case, after passing the tribulation thunder, his realm was much higher than his wife's. Although he succeeded in passing the tribulation thunder, he lost 2 primal chaos supreme treasures. This made Xiaolingyu feel a little distressed. In his opinion, those 2 primal chaos supreme treasures were his foundation and reliance in the world of immortals in the future. Losing them meant losing 2 huge advantages. After Xiaolingyu succeeded in passing the tribulation thunder, his relatives and friends who had passed the tribulation thunder earlier than him began to ascend one after another. As everyone's tribulation thunder was not far apart, the time they took to ascend was also about the same. Almost within 10 years, all his relatives and friends who had reached the immortal realm had ascended. After ascending, I wonder if there's still a need to look for them. After waiting for another 500 years, a ray of light shone down from the sky. The ray of light wrapped around Xiaolingyu's body and slowly rose into the sky under the gaze of thousands of people. The Hua-men cultivators around the sacred mountain waved goodbye. They knew that there was a legend about Xiaolingyu in the past. This legend could be said to be soul-stirring and could be said to be an epic myth. After this, everything about him would become history. The influence he brought to this part of the universe would gradually disappear. Enveloped by the multicolored light, Xiaolingyu entered a pitch-black and long spatial passageway. Then, he felt dizzy. His body was not under his control at all. He was flying forward at an extremely fast speed. Apart from pitch-black darkness, he could not see anything. After an unknown amount of time, the ray of light on Xiaolingyu's body finally dissipated. He also stopped in front of a light door. On the light door, there were 8 big words written on it: "The Gate of Immortals. One can enter but not leave." Chapter 776. He leaped into the light door, but he could not pass through it. Xiaolingyu was bound by an invisible force. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free. What surprised him was that the invisible force invaded his body and quickly spread to the inner world of his dantian. In just a moment, he realized that his inner world had disappeared. Then, his body was pushed out by a huge force. A wild and primitive aura hit him in the face. There was also a faint salty sea breeze. Before Xiaolingyu could take a look at his surroundings, a strong gust of wind came down from the sky. Xiaolingyu looked up and saw a huge bird as big as a cloud. It was flapping its wings and pouncing toward him. The big bird had a pair of silver hook-like claws and a mouth that looked like 2 swords. It was obvious that it saw Xiaolingyu as its prey. Humph! Xiaolingyu snorted and raised his hand to release a primal chaos seal. The primal chaos seal, which was formed by the primal chaos force, whizzed out and collided with the big bird in an instant. Boom! There was a loud explosion. The big bird did not even have time to scream before it was blown into nothingness. It looked powerful, but it had not even reached the connecting heaven realm. How could it block the attack of the primal chaos seal? Originally, there were many big birds flapping their wings and pouncing over as if they were ready to fight for food. However, at this moment, they all flapped their wings and flew away, not daring to come closer. Xiaolingyu finally had time to look at his surroundings. In front of him was a boundless sea. Below him was a beach. The sea was very calm. The waves were not more than 3 feet high. Occasionally, he could see huge fish jumping out of the water. There were many beautiful shells on the beach. There were also many white bones left behind by sea creatures. When he turned around, he saw a dense forest. There were faint roars of monsters and beasts. Is this the world of immortals? Xiaolingyu began to carefully sense everything in this world. What surprised him was that his divine will was actually firmly confined within his body. No matter how much the golden soul pearl trembled, it was unable to let even a trace of soul energy out of his body. Since his soul power couldn't come out of his body, his divine sense naturally didn't exist. It was even more impossible for him to communicate with the natural power of this world. The spatial pressure in the world of immortals was extremely strong. Even Xiaolingyu, who had reached the immortal realm, was unable to lift herself up and fly. How can that big bird fly? It's clearly only in the saint god stage. Xiaolingyu seemed a little confused. However, this wasn't a big deal. What he found even more difficult to understand was where his inner world had gone. His dantian was still there, but not only was his chaotic nascent soul the only thing left in the world within his dantian, the vast and boundless universe had also disappeared. Even the space within his dantian had shrunk to the size of a nascent soul cultivator's dantian. Could it have been erased by that door of light? Xiaolingyu frowned. He then closed his eyes and carefully sensed his inner world. After all, the universe within his inner world was formed by his own chaotic origin power. He should be able to sense their existence. After half an hour, Xiaolingyu opened his eyes and muttered to himself, "I can only vaguely sense their existence, but I can't pinpoint their exact location. It's as if they don't exist in this space-time and world. Could it be that they were transferred or left behind?" Having just arrived at the world of immortals, there were naturally a lot of things that were hard to understand. Xiaolingyu didn't pay too much attention to it. With his back facing the sea, he walked across the beach and entered the dense forest. In the sky of the world of immortals, there were 9 blazing suns. They were arranged in a semicircle. They didn't look big, but their radiance could illuminate the world, giving people a kind of warm feeling. As Xiaolingyu walked, the sunlight shone on his body. He could clearly feel a warm energy invading his body. Along with the invasion of those energies, not only did he feel his body was very comfortable and warm, his power and flesh were also nourished. His power was more abundant, and the circulation of his power was smoother. The life essence in his flesh and bones seemed to have been replenished. Even his soul consciousness became clearer. The periphery of the dense forest was relatively quiet. Other than occasionally seeing some small animals with peculiar shapes that didn't have any attack power, there was only the rustling of leaves. Perhaps there were originally ferocious creatures like that big bird here. However, the bombardment of the primal chaos seal just now was quite powerful. Those ferocious creatures should have been scared away. Very quickly, one of the blazing suns in the sky gradually became blurry. It became transparent and then disappeared. Then, the second blazing sun disappeared. Within 2 hours, the 9 blazing suns in the sky disappeared one by one. The entire world gradually became ice-cold and pitch-black. But not long after, a silver plate-like moon appeared in the pitch-black night sky, scattering cold and clear splendor. Another 2 hours passed. There were now 9 silver moons in the sky. Even though the world was much brighter, it was still far from daytime. The cool breeze in the mountain forest also became bone-chilling cold. Xiaolingyu let the primal chaos true fire spit out by the primal chaos nascent soul to circulate throughout his body. Only then did the ice-cold feeling gradually disappear. The weather in the world of immortals is really strange. I don't know if there's any mystery behind it. At night, the vision was a lot blurry. Even though Xiaolingyu's eyesight wasn't weak, he could only see the situation in a radius of 10 feet around him. It was far from being able to see during the day. Moreover, this mountain forest seemed to be relatively calm during the day. However, at night, the roars of demonic beasts and ferocious beasts became louder and more frequent. The rustling sound in the mountain forest also became more frequent. Xiaolingyu was new here and wasn't familiar with anything. In order to be safe, he didn't rush. Instead, he found a stone wall and used the sharp life-affirming dagger to carve out a small cave. After that, he entered the cave and meditated to wait for daytime. The night was getting deeper and deeper. The weather was also getting colder and colder. However, in the mountain forest, roars that shook the surroundings were unceasingly transmitted. It was as if there was an intense battle going on not far away. Even the ground and this small mountain would tremble slightly from time to time. Under this kind of situation, it was very difficult for Xiaolingyu to concentrate on cultivating. The primal chaos force in the world of immortals was obviously denser than the world of gods. However, he didn't dare to wantonly absorb it. He was afraid that the abnormal energy fluctuations would attract danger to his side. After entering the world of immortals, although he could already live forever, it didn't mean that he wouldn't die under any circumstances. It only meant that he wouldn't die naturally and wouldn't have to worry about his lifespan running out. However, if he encountered a strong enemy or an irresistible danger, he would still die. Not long after, in the bright September night sky, specks of stars appeared. In the distant sky of the world of immortals there was also a galaxy. And Xiaolingyu, who was doing his best to concentrate on cultivating, felt that the connection between him and the galaxy that had disappeared from his inner world had strengthened by a lot. He couldn't help but walk to the entrance of the cave and look up at the vast sky. He felt that the galaxy of his inner world was in the night sky above his head. However, it was so far away that he couldn't reach it. The night time in the world of immortals was as long as 72 hours. Xiaolingyu spent this period of time apprehensively. First, he welcomed the light of dawn. Then, he gradually felt that he was surrounded by warmth again. When the 9 blazing suns appeared in the sky, Xiaolingyu walked out of this simple and crude little cave and continued to walk towards the depths of the mountain forest. Xiaolingyu felt that the depths of the mountain forest was the continent of the world of immortals. It was the place where the cultivators of the world of immortals lived and cultivated. Just like this, Xiaolingyu traveled in the day and rested at night. After a total of 30 days, he discovered that the creatures in this mountain forest mostly cultivated during the day and came out at night. Moreover, when they were cultivating, they were all exposed under the sunlight. They didn't hide their figures. Xiaolingyu felt that it was strange. During the day, he also sat cross-legged on a large blue stone and slowly entered a state of cultivation. Through comparison, Xiaolingyu discovered that cultivating during the day was indeed faster than cultivating during the night. The warm sunlight enveloped his body, making the circulation of his power more comfortable. Moreover, his soul was also more awake. More importantly, the surrounding energy seemed to be more active during the day. The resonance between the energy and the cultivator was also more obvious and more compatible. At night, because the body was cold, the surrounding temperature was too low. Not only was cultivation slow, but the effect was also not good. Moreover, when cultivating at night, there would be a formless cold energy being absorbed from the outside world into the body. It would make the cultivator's body, soul, and nascent soul feel extremely uncomfortable. At this moment, Xiaolingyu finally understood why those creatures cultivated during the day and only came out at night. Vigorous exercise at night could make their bodies heat up. With this, they could resist the cold of the night. After all, there were many creatures with low cultivation. They didn't have an inner flame like the primal true flame to resist the cold. As the time he spent in the world of immortals increased, Xiaolingyu's understanding of the world of immortals also increased. Another 2 months passed. Xiao Lingyu still didn't encounter any danger. However, what surprised him was that he continued to move forward in a straight line. He actually passed through this mountain forest and arrived in front of a beach. Once again, he saw an endless sea. Could it be that this is an island and not a continent? Xiao Lingyu seemed a little disappointed. After another period of exploration, Xiao Lingyu determined that the place he was at was an island surrounded by the vast sea. The area of the island couldn't be considered very big. There weren't any powerful existences on the island. The highest cultivation level was only at the early or middle stage of the heaven-connecting realm. There were many fierce beasts on the island. They often fought at night. If the defeated party couldn't escape, their bodies would be devoured by the enemy, leaving behind a pile of bones. And in the sea, there would occasionally be some strong sea beasts climbing onto the shore. Most of the sea beasts were just basking in the sun on the beach. There were also a few that would rush into the depths of the mountain forest on the island and fight with the fierce beasts on the island. Xiao Lingyu couldn't help but feel awkward. This small island was obviously not the main place of the world of immortals. He was trapped here. Right now, he couldn't fly. Could it be that he had to swim in the sea or make a wooden raft to cross the sea to leave? Those fierce beasts of the Sage God stage can jump 1,000 feet high. Why can't I? Chapter 777. After carefully observing for a few months, Xiao Lingyu finally found the crux of the problem. During this period of cultivation, Xiao Lingyu already felt that his body had become lighter. Cultivation was one aspect. It didn't mean that he had made great progress during this period of cultivation. Instead, it was because he had absorbed a lot of things that were unique to the world of immortals. These things could help his body adapt to the environment of the world of immortals. It could also help him resist the spatial pressure of the world of immortals. Or it could be said that with those special things in his body, the spatial pressure of the world of immortals was gradually alleviating for him. Another aspect was that the creatures that had lived in the world of immortals for many years could also help him reduce the pressure. For example, eating the flesh of some ferocious beasts or some fruit. These ferocious beasts and fruits had also absorbed some of the things that were unique to the world of immortals over the years. That was why they were able to survive in the world of immortals even though they weren't that strong. After making these discoveries, Xiao Lingyu began to search this island. Everything on this island posed no threat to him. Naturally, he quickly cleaned up the entire island. He directly swallowed all the fruits into his stomach. As long as a ferocious beast or demonic beast dared to approach him, he would mercilessly kill them. Then, he would roast their flesh and eat them. In this way, only 2 months had passed. He was already able to fly in the air. However, he couldn't maintain it for a long time. Moreover, it was difficult for him to move quickly. He didn't know how vast this vast ocean was. Xiao Lingyu tried to fly once. Unfortunately, after flying for 4 hours, he couldn't find any other islands or land. Instead, he was constantly harassed by the birds in the sky and the sea beasts in the sea. In the end, he had no choice but to return. Because the sky and sea were not safe, Xiao Lingyu also gave up the idea of making a wooden raft to cross the vast ocean. This vast ocean was boundless. Only God knew if there was an extremely powerful existence in it. He still couldn't take the risk easily. Thus, Xiao Lingyu calmed down and began to concentrate on cultivating on this island. He strived to increase the time he could fly a little longer and increase his speed. This also caused the number of fruits on this island to become fewer and fewer. The ferocious beasts and demonic beasts were also quickly killed off. Fortunately, there were also many sea beasts in the sea for them to hunt. After nearly 10 years of cultivation, one night, Xiao Lingyu, who was sitting cross-legged on a reef near the sea, suddenly felt an abnormally powerful aura approaching from the depths of the sea. He opened his eyes and stood up, frowning as he looked at the dark sea in the distance. A gale swept over from the depths of the sea, sweeping up layers of monstrous waves. The momentum was astonishing. Accompanying the howling winds were the roars of sea beasts that shook the heavens. The raging waves slammed against the island, and the hard reefs were smashed into smithereens, while the strong winds blew down countless tall trees. The starry sky, where the 9 full moons could be clearly seen, was now covered by layers of thick black clouds. Xiao Yu's brows knitted together. He turned around and left. He found a cave on the island with ease and hid inside. Soon after, a torrential rain poured down. The raindrops were swept up by the strong winds like sharp arrows. They were actually able to easily pierce through the leaves, so much so that when the raindrops fell on the hard rocks, they produced a pung-pung-pung sound. Xiao Yu tightly restrained his aura, and used a huge rock to block the entrance of the cave. He had just arrived at the world of immortals, so he didn't want to provoke powerful existences. He didn't want to cause trouble for himself. The strong winds and torrential rain lasted for an entire night, and only stopped when dawn came. The entire island and the nearby sea returned to tranquility. Xiao Yu felt that the danger should have passed, but for safety's sake, he didn't immediately leave the cave. Instead, he waited for an entire 10 days. After 10 days, there were no more accidents on the island, and there were no other big movements. Xiao Yu pushed away the rock and walked out of the cave. The island was already in a mess. Countless trees were cut down, and the unripe fruits that Xiao Yu intentionally left behind were all destroyed. The ground and the rocks were full of holes. Xiao Yu's expression was calm as he walked on the island. The loss of the island didn't affect him much. However, on the beach of the island, Xiao Yu saw a huge sea beast lying on the beach. The sea beast looked like a sea otter, but its body was like a small mountain. However, it was obvious that there were a few serious wounds on its body, and the wounds were still bleeding. The blood dyed the nearby seawater red, and the thick smell of blood was a little pungent. Xiao Yu only took a few glances, and the sea beast already felt his presence, and turned its head to look at him. Roar! With just a glance, the sea beast suddenly stood up and roared at Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu waved his hand, indicating that he didn't have any bad intentions, and then turned to leave. However, the sea beast that was obviously heavily injured let out a loud roar, and then rushed towards Xiao Yu. As the sea beast rushed forward, a large black cloud suddenly appeared in the sky above its head, and gusts of strong wind also appeared out of nowhere. A powerful aura locked onto Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu immediately turned around again, and the sea beast's palm was already coming down with a mighty force. It looked like a simple palm, but it obviously carried a mighty and invisible force, and it sealed a large area of space. When the sea beast was angry, it could make the sky and the earth lose its color, and it could make black clouds gather above its head. It was obviously extraordinary, and its palm made Xiao Yu feel that he couldn't block it. Xiao Yu also felt that he couldn't dodge. He snorted coldly, stomped his feet on the ground, and his body shot up like an arrow. Just as he was about to come into contact with the sky-covering palm, the suicide dagger appeared in Xiao Yu's hand, and he swung the dagger towards his head. The suicide dagger was extremely sharp, and it made a deep cut on the palm. However, the palm still came down with a mighty force, and in an instant, Xiao Yu was slapped into the sand of the island. Xiao Yu's body quality was extremely high, but after being hit by the palm, he felt dizzy and couldn't help but vomit a few mouthfuls of blood. This sea beast was obviously at the immortal stage, and it definitely wasn't the kind that had just advanced. It had been cultivating at the immortal stage for many years, and its strength was not to be underestimated. When the sea beast raised its palm, Xiao Yu flew out from the sand, and his expression was unusually grave. The sea beast seemed to be surprised that its palm didn't kill Xiao Yu. Then, it suddenly opened its mouth, and a gust of wind wrapped in a cold fog swept past where Xiao Yu was. What was surprising was that wherever the gust of wind passed, Everything in the space was sealed in ice. Even Xiao Yu was no exception. His body was frozen in a layer of ice crystals. Not only could he not move at all, but he couldn't even use his skills at this moment. At the same time, waves of bone-chilling energy began to crazily drill into Xiao Yu's body, as if it wanted to freeze his life force from the inside. Fortunately, Xiao Yu's body quality was extremely high, so the cold energy couldn't quickly invade his body. The chaotic divine infant also began to spit out chaotic true fire and circulated it throughout its body to resist the cold energy's invasion. The sea beast waited for 10 breaths of time before it swung its gigantic palm at Xiao Yu again. If Xiao Yu's body was frozen from the inside out, his body would shatter into countless pieces with the layer of ice when the palm landed. Bang! An explosion was heard, and Xiao Yu's body was sent flying far away. Along the way, he spat out mouthfuls of fresh blood. His body landed heavily on the ground, and waves of intense pain came from all over his body. Not only was his qi and blood surging, but many of his bones and tendons were also broken. The sea beast's cultivation base should be much higher than Xiao Yu's. In addition, Xiao Yu had just entered the world of immortals, and his body had yet to be fully adjusted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so helpless. The attack still did not kill its opponent. The sea beast seemed even more bizarre. With its rich battle experience, it did not give its opponent any time to react. It opened its mouth and spat out a whirlwind. The whirlwind was also extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had wrapped Xiao Yu inside. Then, a few sharp teeth flew out of the sea beast's mouth and shot toward Xiao Yu, who was trapped in the whirlwind. No matter how hard Xiao Yu struggled, he was unable to break out of the whirlwind. At this moment, he realized that the sea beast's cultivation base was much higher than his. He could not even break through its simple move. The sea beast's sharp teeth accurately hit Xiao Yu's body and pierced through it. Xiao Yu had always been proud of his body's quality. However, under the attack of those sharp teeth, it was as fragile as a thin sheet of paper. The injuries on his body worsened by a lot. The sea beast was obviously not satisfied with just injuring Xiao Yu. It stretched out its palm again, but it did not hit Xiao Yu's head. Instead, it grabbed Xiao Yu. First, he felt his vision turn black. Then, a huge force came from all directions. In an instant, the bones in his body started to crackle. If it was not for his high-quality body, Xiao Yu would have been crushed into a meat patty. At the moment of life and death, Xiao Yu opened the vertical eye between his brows. A beam of destructive sanguine light easily hit the sea beast's clenched palm. The beam of destructive sanguine light pierced through the sea beast's giant palm and suddenly exploded. Roar! The sea beast let out a pained roar as its entire fleshy palm was blasted apart. After all, that beam of destructive sanguine light had used up almost 30% of Xiao Yu's energy. The explosion of a large amount of essence blood and chaos origin power was naturally powerful. Without waiting for the sea beast to attack again, Xiao Yu's heavenly eye of destruction shot out another beam of destructive sanguine light. Because the distance was too close and the attack was too sudden, the sea beast was unable to dodge. Its head was struck by the beam of destructive sanguine light and exploded. After its head exploded, a cloud of bloody mist burst out. The sea beast's mountainous body also collapsed with a loud bang. Streams of blood gushed out from the sea beast's neck like a tidal wave. The scene was extremely horrifying. Chapter 778. Dragging his heavily injured and weak body, Xiao Yu walked to the front of the white bead. He could feel waves of majestic and powerful energy ripples coming from it. This white bead was obviously a good item. Xiao Yu took out a jade box and put the white bead away. Then, Xiao Yu felt that there was an incomparably pure life essence flowing out of the sea beast's corpse. He quickly placed one of his palms on the sea beast's corpse and started to absorb the life essence of the sea beast's body. A thick and pure life essence entered his body and was refined by the primal chaos fire. It slowly worked on his body and helped him recover from his injuries. After a full day, more than half of the sea beast's life essence flowed into the space of the world of immortals. A small part of it was absorbed by Xiaolingyu. This small part of the life essence was enough to completely heal Xiaolingyu's injuries and even nourish and improve his body. Xiaolingyu took out the jade box again and was about to study it carefully. Suddenly, he saw a big golden ship slowly approaching from the distant sea. The big ship looked golden and dazzling. The radiance overflowing from it made the surrounding sea water shine with golden waves. Vaguely, he could see some cultivators at the bow of the ship. Xiaolingyu quickly put away the jade box and stood on the shore, waiting for the big golden ship to come to shore. Looking at the direction the big golden ship was heading, it was obviously heading towards this small island. In less than 10 minutes, the big ship had already arrived at the shore. Looking at it from a close distance, the big ship was even bigger. It was no less than 3,000 feet long and no less than 3,000 feet wide. It was like a floating golden island. Apart from its huge size, the big golden ship's shape was very normal. There was nothing special about it. After the ship reached the shore, 3 men flew out. One of them was dressed in luxurious clothes, like a young master, while the other 2 were holding unsheathed long swords in their hands. They were dressed in martial arts attire and stood behind the young master in luxurious clothes, looking like bodyguards. The young man in embroidered clothes looked at the reddish seawater and smelled the faint smell of blood in the air. He frowned and said, "The moon otter should have died here." After that, the young man in the brocade robe slowly walked up to Xiaolingyu, waved his clasped fist, and said, "Brother, was the moon otter killed by you?" Xiaolingyu nodded and did not deny it. He could guess that the moon otter that this person was talking about was the giant sea beast that he had just killed. "That's a good move, brother." That moon otter was already at the 9th celestial layer of longevity life. Although it was heavily injured after being hunted by us for a long time, it was definitely stronger than a 7th celestial layer of longevity life. "Brother, since you were able to kill it, you must also be at the 9th celestial layer of longevity life, right?" "Something like that." Xiaolingyu still did not deny it, even though he did not know what the 9 heavens of longevity meant. "I wonder if brother is willing to transfer the life pearl of the moon otter to me? I am willing to exchange it for 50,000 yang crystals." The rich man in embroidered clothes seemed to be very sincere. "That pearl is also very useful to me," Xiaolingyu said noncommittally. At the same time, he was trying to guess the meaning of the 2 new terms, life pearl and yang crystal. He was even more vigilant in case the other party attacked him for the life pearl. The rich man in embroidered clothes seemed to be in a difficult position. He continued, "To tell you the truth, I have already accumulated 9 yang pearls and 8 moon life pearls. Now, I only need 1 more moon life pearl to advance to the 9th celestial layer of longevity life. I hope brother can help me. If brother thinks that 50,000 yang crystals is too little, I am willing to add another 10,000. Brother is already at the 9th celestial layer of longevity life pearl, so the life pearl of the moon otter is not very useful to brother." 80,000 yang crystals, Xiaolingyu said indifferently. Although he was confused, he acted as if he knew everything. The rich man in embroidered clothes frowned. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "Okay, I will do as brother says." The rich man in embroidered clothes then took out a storage bag and handed it over, saying, "Brother, please check it first." Xiaolingyu took the storage bag without hesitation. However, his soul power could not form divine sense, so he could not see the contents of the storage bag. "Not bad." Xiaolingyu pretended to have finished checking and put away the storage bag. Then, He handed the jade box containing the life pearl of the moon otter to the rich man in embroidered clothes. The rich man in embroidered clothes opened the jade box in front of Xiaolingyu, and then a little excitement appeared on his face. "Thank you for your help, brother. I will not disturb you any longer. Goodbye." The rich man in embroidered clothes turned to board the ship. "Wait," Xiaolingyu called out softly. When the rich man looked back suspiciously, he smiled and said, "I have been out for a long time and am a little tired. I wonder if brother is willing to give me a ride?" "I am honored." The rich man in embroidered clothes paused in surprise, and then very politely led Xiaolingyu onto the golden ship. Then, the golden ship began to turn around and slowly accelerated into the depths of the sea. "May I ask where brother is cultivating?" Since they were on the same ship, it was inevitable to communicate. Seeing that the ship was moving steadily, the rich man in embroidered clothes came to talk. "I am cultivating, and I don't have a place to stay for long," Xiaolingyu replied. The rich man in embroidered clothes naturally thought that Xiaolingyu was unwilling to reveal his information, so he did not ask any more questions. Instead, he said, "Arrange a quiet room for brother. That would be the best." Xiaolingyu nodded. The rich man in embroidered clothes brought Xiaolingyu to the cabin. After walking through a long corridor, they entered a small quiet room. When they returned to the deck, a guard holding a sword asked the rich man in embroidered clothes, "Second master, is he really at the 9th heaven of longevity realm?" The rich man in embroidered clothes said with uncertainty, "Anyway, I can't see through his specific cultivation level. Judging from his aura, he seems to be at the 5th or 6th heaven of longevity realm. Although his aura was not strong, it revealed a power that made me feel danger. Even if he is not at the 9th heaven of longevity realm, he is not far from it. Otherwise, how could he have killed the sea moon otter? The 9th heaven of longevity realm is already considered a master in the inner sea of Gourd Bay, and all of them have been famous for a long time. However, I have never heard of this person. He is most likely not a cultivator from Gourd Bay," the guard said. "He could be from the outer sea, or he could be from the inland. Looking at his cautious appearance, I guess he doesn't like to have too much interaction with others. Maybe he is out on business this time." The rich man in embroidered clothes first analyzed, and then said, "No matter what, it is not good to be on bad terms with him. Just serve him carefully." "Second master, this time out to sea, not only did you collect the life pearls of the 9th heaven, but you also found dozens of longevity realm cultivators who have just ascended. It can be said that you have a great harvest. When you return, the family head will be very happy," the guard said flatteringly. "The only pity is that most of the female cultivators we found have already lost their virginity. We can only bring them back as maids," the rich man in embroidered clothes said with dissatisfaction. "There are already many maids in the family. They can also be incorporated into the scarf guard. They are all top masters in the lower realm. In the longevity realm, it is inevitable that they will be somewhat aloof and arrogant. It is good to let them suffer some hardship in the scarf guard," a guard suggested. "The scarf guard is managed by Big Sister. Her standards are very high. Not just anyone can enter." The rich man in embroidered clothes smiled. Because they already had a great harvest out to sea, the rich man in embroidered clothes commanded the big golden ship to move forward at an extremely fast speed. Almost every moment, they drew a white trail that was several thousand miles long on the vast and boundless sea. Along the way, they passed by countless islands. However, such a dazzling and obvious big golden ship did not encounter any attacks from sea beasts or birds. The big golden ship moved forward steadily and swiftly. Nearly 100 years passed like this. Only then did the big golden ship slowly decelerate. Finally, it stopped at the shore of a beach. "First, bring those cultivators who have just ascended off the ship," the rich man in embroidered clothes instructed the guards on the deck. "Understood." The guards accepted the order and went down to the cabin one after another. They opened the quiet rooms on both sides of a long corridor and invited the cultivators out one by one. These cultivators were not dressed neatly like the guards. They were dressed differently. At this moment, they all appeared curious and somewhat nervous. Under the guidance of the guards, this group of cultivators was brought to the deck, and then they were brought down from the ship. Seeing that the guards had gone far away, the rich man in embroidered clothes personally went down to the cabin and knocked on the door of a quiet room. The door of the quiet room was then opened, and Xiao walked out from it. "Brother, the big ship has already docked. If you have time, you can come to my humble home as a guest," the rich man in embroidered clothes said politely. "Haha, there's no need. I'm already very grateful that you're willing to give me a ride. I wouldn't dare to disturb you again." Xiao did not need the rich man in embroidered clothes to guide him. He walked along the long corridor to the deck. As he moved, he asked, "Where are we now?" The rich man in embroidered clothes replied, "We've arrived at Gourd Island." Xiao nodded indifferently, but he did not know where Gourd Island was. After getting off the big ship and reaching the shore, the rich man in embroidered clothes said politely, "If you're not in a hurry to leave, you can come to the Yun family as a guest at any time." Xiao cupped his fists and said, "If I have time, I'll definitely go." After that, the two of them bowed again and bid farewell. After walking for a while, Xiao soared into the sky. After flying up, he discovered that Gourd Island was not small. It looked like a huge gourd lying in the sea. Presumably, this was how Gourd Island got its name. After flying for a while, Xiao vaguely saw the outline of a sizable city. He then slowed down and flew over. When he was about 10 kilometers away from the city, Xiao descended from the sky and walked forward. On the way, he saw many villages and towns where cultivators gathered. The closer he got to the city, the more densely packed the villages and towns seemed. Chapter 779. After paying the entrance fee of 1 yang crystal, Xiao stepped into Gourd City. On the way, Xiao dripped his blood on the storage pouch to recognize it as its owner. After that, he could use his mind to take out the items inside. The purpose of entering the city this time was very clear. It was to collect some information about the world of immortals. Many shops that sold jade slips became Xiao first choice. Because he didn't understand the prices of the world of immortals, it was inevitable that he would be cheated by the shops. However, most of the jade slips were only worth a few dozen yang crystals, so Xiao didn't take them to heart. After passing through several shops and purchasing dozens of jade slips, Xiao discovered that 80,000 yang crystals was indeed a large sum. However, what made Xiao depressed was that he couldn't read the contents of the jade slips because his soul power couldn't form divine sense. Others whose cultivation was lower than his could use divine sense, but he couldn't. There must be a problem here. After passing through several streets, Xiao stopped in front of a 3-story pavilion. The pavilion was very lively in front of it. There were actually many cultivators waiting to enter the pavilion. Business seemed to be very good. There was a blue plaque on the lintel of the first floor with 3 golden words, "Awakening God Pavilion," written on it. Xiao walked to the back of the line and asked a seemingly middle-aged cultivator, "What kind of business does this Awakening God Pavilion do?" "Business is unexpectedly good." The cultivator first glanced at Xiao and found that he couldn't detect his aura. Then, he respectfully cupped his fists and said, "Senior, this Awakening God Pavilion is a place for cultivators who have just ascended to the world of immortals to remove their soul shackles. Because the souls of cultivators who ascended from the lower realm are not compatible with the world of immortals, their soul power is firmly suppressed in their knowledge sea and can't come out of their bodies. This Awakening God Pavilion can help everyone remove this restriction." "Oh, I see." Xiao nodded and then silently stood in the line. The cultivator frowned and asked, Senior also wants to enter the Awakening God Pavilion? Let's go in and take a look. Xiaoling Yu indifferently replied. You've also just ascended? The cultivator asked in surprise. Yes, Xiaoling Yu said calmly. You've only just ascended, yet you're still putting on such an unfathomable look. You're even calmly accepting the title of senior. How shameless! The cultivator said furiously. You're the one who called me senior. I didn't force you, Xiaoling Yu replied. Humph. Brat, you better be careful in the future. Don't let me see you outside. The cultivator coldly snorted and threatened. Ha ha! Xiaoling Yu only laughed. Pang San, before you awaken, you must remain calm. You have violated the precepts. At this moment, an old man in a silver-gray robe walked over and said, Our Scarlet Pine stronghold has never bullied others. You've all just ascended not long ago, so you should support each other. Don't get involved in meaningless dispute. Yes. You're right. Pang San has learned his lesson. The middle-aged cultivator called Pang San repeatedly cupped his hands and replied. Little brother, how long have you ascended? The old man turned around and asked Xiaoling Yu with a face full of smiles. More than 100 years. Xiaoling Yu replied. More than 100 years? The old man frowned slightly and said doubtfully, As far as I know, those who ascended from below would be placed on islands in the inner and outer seas. Those who have just ascended cannot fly for long periods of time. The power of the soul is also tightly restricted within the body. If you're not familiar with the environment of the world of immortals after 100 years, it's even more difficult to travel from the sea to Gourd Island. A kind-hearted person helped me and let me board a ship. Xiaoling Yu vaguely said. Little brother, since you've just ascended, you probably don't have a place to stay, right? The old man seemed to be concerned and asked. I like to be alone. Xiaoling Yu replied. I know, little brother, you must be a leader in the lower realms. You must be respected by everyone. But little brother, you must understand that this is the world of immortals. There are countless experts in the immortal realm. Since you've just arrived, it's better to have a safe place to stay. As the saying goes, if a chopstick is gently broken, 10 pairs of chopsticks will be firmly held together. A good man also needs 3 helpers. Thank you for your kindness. I won't stay on Gourd Island for long. After I wake up, I'll leave. Before the old man finished speaking, Xiaoling Yu interrupted. The old man did not give up. After he awkwardly stopped persuading, his eyes lit up and said, Little brother, you've just ascended. I'm afraid you don't have many yang crystals in your bag. This time, you'll need 500 yang crystals to wake up. For a cultivator who has just ascended, 500 yang crystals is not a small amount. Xiaoling Yu smiled and said, I don't lack yang crystals. Thank you for your reminder. No way, where did you get your yang crystals? The old man was very surprised. There's no need to explain this to you, right? Xiaoling Yu said impatiently. I'm Qing Song, the second in command of Red Pine Stronghold. If you change your mind, little brother, you can walk 1,000 miles out of the south gate and you'll see Red Pine Stronghold. Just say my name. Of course. Xiaoling Yu said perfunctorily. After waiting in line for an hour, the old man, Qing Song, led the 5 cultivators in front of Xiaoling Yu into the Awakening God Tower. Xiaoling Yu, who was originally at the back of the line, was now at the front of the line. After waiting for less than 100 breaths, a cultivator holding a large saber guarding the door on the first floor said to Xiaoling Yu, Go in. The first floor of the Awakening God Tower was quite large. There were 8 counters inside and only one was empty. Xiaoling Yu walked towards that counter. After paying 500 yang crystals, Xiaoling Yu received a jade token with the words, Second floor Ding Mao engraved on it. According to the guidance of the female cultivator behind the counter, who always had a smile on her face, Xiaoling Yu went up to the second floor and easily found room Ding Mao. Room Ding Mao was not big. There was only a small square table less than a foot tall and 2 prayer mats. An old man in a white robe sat cross-legged on one of the prayer mats, facing the door of the room. After Xiao Yu entered, he opened his eyes and said, "Sit." When Xiao Yu sat cross-legged in front of him, the old man asked, "How long have you ascended?" Xiao Yu said truthfully, "More than 100 years. The old man did not have any strange expression. He nodded and said, "It's easier to wake up within 1,000 years of ascension. Relax." As he spoke, the old man took out a golden pill and said, "There are 2 ways to wake up. The first is to use the tower's secret method to shake your soul. The second is to take the awakening pill. The first method requires you to completely let go of your mental defenses and may injure your soul. The second method is much simpler and has no risk." Xiao Yu asked curiously, "Since shaking one's soul can wake up, why does everyone still come to the Awakening God Tower?" The old man smiled and said, "Shaking one's soul is just a simple method. There are many ways to do it. If other cultivators don't know this method and shake the soul of a newly ascended cultivator, it will definitely shatter the other party's soul. Only the secret method can guarantee safety. At most, it will injure the other party, but it will definitely not destroy the other party's soul. Cultivators who have just ascended are almost all in the early stage of the immortal realm. Their realms are not stable, so their souls are very weak." After listening to the old man's explanation, Xiao Yu naturally understood a lot. He asked again, "This awakening pill should be paid separately, right?" The old man nodded and said, "It's worth 1,000 sun crystals. If you can't take out that many sun crystals, it's fine. We'll use the first method to wake up." Xiao Yu hesitated for a moment, then took out 1,000 sun crystals and said, "What if this awakening pill doesn't work?" The old man took the sun crystals and said, "Don't worry. If it doesn't work, we'll refund your sun crystals and compensate you with another 1,000 sun crystals. The awakening pill's efficacy dissipates very quickly. If you don't believe me, just take it. At most, you'll be able to wake up in 2 hours." Xiao Yu did as he was told. He went to a corner of the room and sat down cross-legged. Then, he took the awakening pill. The old man continued to receive other cultivators who came to wake up. However, 4 cultivators who had just ascended, it was difficult to take out 500 sun crystals. Most of them needed to join a force or team and be funded by others to wake up. Few people could take out 1,000 sun crystals like Xiao Yu to buy the awakening pill. Just as the old man had said, the medicinal efficacy of the spirit awakening pill dissipated extremely quickly. Almost as soon as it entered Xiao Yu's stomach, it had already dispersed. Then, it quickly rushed into Xiao Yu's knowledge sea and wrapped around his golden soul pearl. The efficacy of the pill constantly attacked Xiao Yu's golden soul bead and then slowly seeped into it. The old man cast a spell step by step to wake up the cultivators who came in. Most of the cultivators who came out were pale and their steps were unsteady, as if they had not recovered from a serious illness. Moreover, their expressions showed that they had a lingering fear, as if they had just woken up from a nightmare. It was obvious that although the old man's secret technique could wake them up safely, the cultivators who were awakened would definitely suffer a lot. Xiao Yu did not suffer much, but after 2 hours, the efficacy of the awakening pill had completely seeped into his golden soul bead. However, he still could not use his soul strength to form divine sense. His soul strength was still firmly confined in the golden soul bead. Impossible! The old man listened to Xiao Yu's explanation with a look of disbelief. His face was ashen as he said, "Come and sit across from me." There was already a cultivator sitting across from the old man, but when that cultivator saw the old man's expression, he tactfully stood up and stood to the side. After Xiao Yu sat down, the old man pointed a finger between his eyebrows and ordered, "Start trying to release your soul strength." After a moment, the old man withdrew his finger and said in confusion, Not only is your soul strength special, but your cultivation is also not weak. If you didn't just ascend, then you really haven't woken up yet." After pondering for a long time, the old man took out 2,000 yang crystals and said, "I can't wake you up in your situation. You have to go to the 3rd floor." Shaolin Yu calmly took the yang crystals and said, "Who do I look for on the 3rd floor? Which room?" The old man smiled and said, "The 3rd floor is for experts to wake you up. You need me to bring you up." Shaolin Yu had worked hard for many years and naturally understood the old man's meaning. He immediately returned the 2,000 yang crystals to the old man. Chapter 780. There were only 3 rooms on the 3rd floor of the Awakening God Tower. The old man from Ding Mao's room on the 2nd floor brought Shaolin Yu to the room closest to the stairs. The door opened automatically, and the old man and Shaolin Yu entered the room one after the other. Not only was this room large, but it was also divided into an inner and outer room. Moreover, the decorations were very luxurious. There was a thick plush carpet, a large crystal ceiling, and antique tables and chairs. There were also some obviously extraordinary calligraphy and paintings. Under one of the walls there was a desk that was half the height of a person. Behind the desk was a very young man. There were 2 people opposite the young man. One was a young and beautiful woman, and the other was a stooped old man who held a walking stick. The beautiful woman sat on a chair, and the old man stood silently beside her. When Shaolin Yu and the old man from Ding Mao's room entered, the 3 people in the room all looked over. The beautiful woman's face was a little pale, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. With just a glance, the beautiful woman slapped the desk and angrily rebuked, "You're a awakening god expert. You actually injured my soul after awakening." The young man smiled bitterly and explained, "Third young miss, your situation is special. You were born less than 100,000 years ago, and now you're already at the 4th heaven of longevity realm. The difficulty of awakening is far greater than that of cultivators who just ascended. I've already done my best. Third young miss, please understand." "Understand? I understand you, but who will understand the pain I suffered just now?" the beautiful woman said angrily. "How about this? The awakening fee will be waived. Just treat it as compensation." The young man shook his head helplessly, and then pushed a storage bag in front of the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman didn't refuse and immediately put away the storage bag. However, she still didn't give up and said, "There's really a problem with your awakening level. In order to avoid misleading people, I suggest you go and cultivate properly before showing off your skills." The young man was criticized like this, but he didn't get angry. He smiled and said, "Third young miss, you should quickly go to the side and meditate. The injury to your soul can't be delayed. This soul-nourishing pill should be of some help to third young Mississippi. Of course, it's free." The beautiful woman received the medicinal pill and said, "At least you know what's good for you." Then, the beautiful woman casually found a nearby chair and sat down cross-legged. She took some pills and quietly recuperated. The stooped old man remained silent and stood silently behind the beautiful woman with an indifferent expression. "What's wrong with him?" The young man pointed at Shaolin Yu and asked. "His soul is special. His cultivation level shouldn't be low. The spirit awakening pill can't awaken him." Ding Mao cupped his fists and replied respectfully. Could it be that he was also born in the world of immortals? The young man frowned and asked. "No, he ascended from the lower realm. It has only been 100 years since he ascended," Ding Mao replied. "You can leave now." The young man waved his hand at Ding Mao's old man. After the old man left, the young man pointed at the chair where the beautiful woman was sitting and said, "Please sit." Shaolin Yu had just sat down when she sensed a divine will that was not very strong begin to recklessly scan her body. She knew it was the divine will of the young man sitting opposite her, so she didn't try to defend herself. It's good that you can cultivate your body to this level in the lower realm. The young man first praised her and then said, "You have indeed ascended for 100 years. It seems that your cultivation level was also cultivated in the lower realm. What level of immortals do you think you are at now?" Xiaoling Yu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I'm not sure, but I'm sure that I'm much stronger than ordinary cultivators who have just ascended." The young man said, "The stronger your cultivation level, the harder it is to awaken your spirit. If you are at the 7th heavenly layer of immortals, none of us can awaken your spirit. Of course, it's extremely rare for someone who has just ascended to reach the 7th heavenly layer of immortals. You can pay 5,000 yang crystals first." Awakening an expert's spirit was naturally much more expensive. Fortunately, Xiaoling Yu still had tens of thousands of yang crystals. After receiving the yang crystals, the young man said, "You should meditate and adjust your breath first. Try to keep your mind in a clear state." Xiaoling Yu closed his eyes and began to meditate. About an hour later, he suddenly felt a wisp of spiritual will like a gentle breeze, gently probing into his sea of consciousness. He knew that the young man had begun to awaken his spirit. Judging from the young man's actions, Xiaoling Yu felt that the young man's spirit awakening technique should be quite good. The divine will quickly wrapped around his golden soul bead, and then began to gradually strengthen. The divine will surrounding his golden soul bead became thicker and thicker. This continued for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. The divine will wrapped around Xiaoling Yu's golden soul bead gradually divided into 8 parts. They were arranged in a very special formation in 8 directions of the golden soul bead, and then suddenly trembled together. However, the trembling was very light at first and then gradually intensified. It caused Xiaoling Yu's golden soul bead to tremble at the same time. It didn't cause too much of a shock to Xiaoling Yu's soul. This further proved that the young man's spirit awakening technique was not as weak as the beautiful woman had said. 2 hours later, the formation formed by the 8 divine will began to spin around Xiaoling Yu's soul at an accelerated speed. Xiaoling Yu's golden soul bead also trembled violently and spun rapidly. At this step, Xiaoling Yu gradually felt a swelling pain in his soul. The depths of his consciousness were surging. His face gradually turned pale and his body began to exude scalding sweat. This step lasted for 4 hours before it stopped. The divine will slowly withdrew from Xiaoling Yu's knowledge sea. However, after Xiaoling Yu's golden soul bead gradually returned to normal, he still felt that his soul power couldn't be used. The young man slowly stopped and said with a gloomy face, "Fellow Taoist, your realm must have exceeded the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life. It's too difficult to awaken your spirit." At this moment, the beautiful woman woke up from her meditation. She sneered and said, "I told you that your technique is weak, but you're still not convinced. Just now you said that my soul is special and my realm is too high. Now you're using the same words to deal with others. He's a cultivator who has just ascended for more than 100 years. You actually said that his realm is beyond the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life. You're making up such a reason. Do you believe it yourself?" The young man could be said to have given way to this beautiful woman again and again. Not only did he not charge her for awakening her spirit, he even gave her a soul-nourishing pill. This beautiful woman was still mocking him. No matter how good his temper was, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Mister, please don't take offense. My family's young lady has no ill intentions." The stooped old man, who had been silent all this time, saw that the young man's eyes had narrowed. He quickly interrupted. After hearing the stooped old man's words, the young man's expression softened a little. He didn't say anything to the beautiful woman. "I know you're definitely not convinced. Do you dare to make a bet with me?" The beautiful woman said aggressively. "What bet?" the young man asked curiously. "I bet that this guy's realm is definitely not beyond the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life." Let's bet 200,000 yang crystals. Do you dare? The beautiful woman said confidently. Okay. The young man pondered for less than a breath, then he nodded and agreed. 200,000 yang crystals was not a small amount, but the young man firmly believed that his judgment was not wrong. Then you continue. I'll wait. The beautiful woman crossed her arms in front of her chest and sat to the side, looking calm and unruffled. The young man said to Xiaolingyu, fellow Taoist, according to the rules of this building, to awaken a cultivator above the fourth heavenly layer of longevity life, it costs 50,000 yang crystals. I don't know if fellow Taoist has prepared enough. It doesn't matter. If he hasn't prepared enough, I'll pay for him. The beautiful woman said generously. I have. Xiaolingyu smiled and took out 45,000 yang crystals. To be honest, Xiaolingyu didn't like the beautiful woman's unruly and capricious nature, but he felt that this young awakening master's temperament was good. As for how many yang crystals he had to spend, Xiaolingyu didn't care very much, as long as it could awaken him. He didn't have a clear idea of the number of yang crystals. Fellow Taoist has just arrived in the longevity world for more than 100 years, but you can take out so many yang crystals. You are not an ordinary person. The young man praised again and then said, the awakening method later is stronger. Fellow Taoist's soul may be injured. I can guarantee that the awakening method will succeed and that fellow Taoist's soul won't collapse, but I hope that fellow Taoist can endure the pain. Xiaolingyu nodded and said, fellow Taoist, just do your best. I have suffered a lot. Then, the awakening method began again. Xiaolingyu released his mind's defenses, and the young man's divine sense invaded his knowledge sea again, and then divided into 8 strands. However, these 8 strands of divine sense turned into 8 soul force handprints, which surrounded Xiaolingyu's golden soul bead and constantly slapped it. As soon as the awakening method began, it brought great tremors to Xiaolingyu's soul, and waves of pain spread to the depths of his soul consciousness. This kind of pain was difficult for ordinary cultivators to endure, but Xiaolingyu, who had experienced hundreds of battles and even detonated his soul, could easily endure it. The divine sense handprints gradually became stronger, and the pain also became more intense. Xiaolingyu could clearly feel that when the divine sense handprints slapped him, his golden soul bead began to vibrate, and at the same time, it began to overflow with soul force. His soul force first spread to his knowledge sea, and then slowly came out of his body, resonating with the space of the longevity world, and gradually merged with it. More and more soul force accumulated in this room, and condensed into a strand of divine sense. This strand of divine sense belonged to Xiaolingyu, and it gradually became stronger. At first, it was very weak, but it quickly became stronger. The hunchbacked old man frowned at first, then sighed and said, "Third young mistress, you have lost." "How is this possible? He has only ascended for 100 years. How can there be such a strong fluctuation of divine sense?" The beautiful woman was dumbfounded and said in disbelief. Chapter 781. At this moment, Xiaolingyu's soul had been recognized by the space-time of the world of immortals and could fully emerge from her body. Although the vast and vigorous divine sense fluctuations could not break out due to the restrictions placed in the room, they accumulated in the room and formed a huge pressure. Under this pressure, the beautiful woman felt her divine sense tremble and her body tremble. The stooped old man smashed his walking stick under his feet, and an even more powerful aura surged out of his body, protecting the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman felt better, but her face was still full of shock. She was already at the fourth heavenly layer of immortals, so what was the realm of the person who had just awakened? Xiaolingyu and the young awakening master meditated for a while, and then both opened their eyes. Xiaolingyu asked, "How many yang crystals for a soul-nourishing pill?" The young man smiled and took out a soul-nourishing pill, saying, "I'll give you one for free." At this moment, the young man was sure that this cultivator, who had just ascended for 100 years, was at the peak of the 5th heavenly layer of immortals, and was only one step away from the 6th heavenly layer. Thank you. Xiaolingyu took the soul-nourishing pill, and sat down on a chair with soft cushions in the room. She took the pill and calmed down. Her soul had suffered heavy injuries when she woke up. If she only relied on herself, it would take a long time to recover. With the help of the soul-nourishing pill, her recovery would be faster. Third miss, does our bet still count? Although the young man also consumed a lot of energy, a faint smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Of course it counts. A loss is a loss. Isn't it just 200,000 yang crystals? I, Sangji, am not a sore loser. The beautiful woman looked proud, but after a moment she frowned and said to the stooped old man beside her, Uncle Tua, lend me 120,000 yang crystals. The stooped old man called Uncle Tua paused and replied, Third miss, you don't know. This old servant never carries yang crystals. Sangji, who appeared to be a 16-year-old girl, was obviously unhappy, but she did not blame Uncle Tua. Instead, she said to the young man, I'll give you 80,000 yang crystals first. As for the remaining 120,000, I'll send someone to deliver it to you when I go back. The young man accepted the 80,000 pieces of yang crystals and said, Haha, third young lady, you don't have to take it too seriously. You don't need to return the rest, as long as third young lady doesn't say that Xiaoku's skills are not good enough in the future. Humph. I, Sangji, have always been a man of my word. The 120,000 sun crystals will definitely be delivered later. As for your skill, it still needs to be verified. With that, Sangji led Uncle Tua out of the room. The young awakening master shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then, he began to meditate. 4 hours after taking the soul-nurturing pill, Xiaolingyu felt that his soul had stabilized. The effects of the soul-nurturing pill had also completely dissipated. The injuries to his soul could only be slowly healed in the future. As soon as Xiaolingyu woke up, a woman in a palace dress entered the side room. The woman left behind a storage pouch, and then left without saying a word. The young awakening master glanced at the storage pouch, and put it away. The corners of his mouth curled up into a bitter smile. Many thanks for helping me wake up. I still have some trivial matters to attend to, so I won't disturb you any further. Xiaolingyu stood up and bid farewell. Wait a moment. The young man called out softly. When Xiaolingyu turned around in confusion, he continued, Fellow Taoist, have you joined any clans or teams? Xiaolingyu shook his head and said, No, what's wrong? The young man said, Fellow Taoist, you've just ascended not long ago. You still don't know much about the world of immortals. You should know that the world of immortals allows everyone to have an endless lifespan. In fact, it's not much different from the lower realms. It's survival of the fittest. Xiaolingyu asked, Fellow Taoist, do you have any advice for me? The young man shook his head and said, It's not advice. I just want to ask fellow Taoists to stay and become a awakening master. With fellow Taoists' cultivation, it's still easy for you to awaken ordinary people who just ascended. The treatment of a awakening master is extremely high. It's something that many cultivators at the 4th celestial layer of immortals and above yearn for even in their dreams. Xiaolingyu smiled and said, I prefer to be alone and unrestrained. The young man continued to explain, awakening masters aren't restricted too much. After being hired by the Awakening Tower, you'll learn the awakening technique of the Awakening Tower. After studying and becoming proficient in it, you'll be on duty in shift. Every 100 years, you'll only be on duty for 10 years. The rest of your time is up to you. As long as you don't divulge the secrets and secret techniques of the Awakening Tower won't impose any restrictions on you. Xiaolingyu asked curiously, Such good treatment, so many cultivators yearn for it even in their dreams. Fellow Taoist, how do you know that the head of the Awakening Tower will want me? The young man said confidently, "The Awakening Tower doesn't want ordinary people, but it thirsts for knowledge of rare geniuses. I dare guarantee that fellow Taoist will be accepted." Xiao muttered to himself for a moment, then cupped his fists and said, "Then I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to recommend me." Having just arrived at the world of immortals, Xiao indeed needed a place to stay. If what the young cultivator said just now was true, this awakening tower was very suitable for him. It just so happens that the head steward is in the tower. I'll bring you to see him now. The young man immediately stood up, then brought Xiao out of the room. He didn't go downstairs. After walking a few steps, the young man stopped in front of the door of the room next door and knocked on the door. "Come in." The door opened and a slightly tired voice came out. The young man brought Xiao into the room. He appeared to be very careful and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The structure of this room was exactly the same as the young man's room. At this moment, a middle-aged cultivator wearing a purple robe was sitting behind a desk. The middle-aged cultivator's face was a bit pale, and he was about the same as the young cultivator who helped Xiao wake up. It seemed that he was injured. "Miling, what's the matter?" the middle-aged cultivator asked with an indifferent expression. The young cultivator called Miling replied, "My lord, this fellow Taoist is interested in joining our awakening tower, so I brought him here for you to take a look." The middle-aged cultivator made a no sound, then looked at Xiao. A faint light shot out from his eyes. A moment later, the middle-aged cultivator said, "He just woke up, and his cultivation is close to the 6th heavenly layer of immortals. It seems that he hasn't ascended for long. He's really good material. However, the Awakening Tower in Gourd City doesn't lack manpower." The middle-aged cultivator rubbed the bridge of his nose, then said, "Then let Yuanqing leave. As for this awakening technique, you teach it to him." "Yes, my lord. Miling will do his best to teach him," Miling hurriedly replied. The middle-aged cultivator took out a palm-sized jade tablet and said to Xiao, "Tell me your name." Xiao replied. The middle-aged cultivator stretched out a finger and made a few gestures on the jade tablet. Then, he tossed the jade tablet over and said, "Be careful when you do things. Don't make any mistakes." "Yes." Xiao took the jade tablet and nodded. At this moment, the jade tablet's originally smooth surface was engraved with a large Xiao character and two smaller Lingyu characters. The middle-aged cultivator waved his hand and said, "Miling, bring this new brother Xiao to Yuanqing's room. Tell Yuanqing to come see me." Immediately, Miling brought Xiao to the second floor and stopped in front of Ding Mao's room. Miling didn't knock and directly pushed open the door of Ding Mao's room. At this moment, there was no one in the room. Miling said to the old man, "Yuanqing, the Lord Steward invites you upstairs." The old man was puzzled, but he didn't ask and immediately went to the third floor. "I didn't expect that I would have to chase someone away when I came here." Xiao smiled bitterly. "Haha, this is the world of immortals. There's nothing strange about it. You don't have to blame yourself. Yuanqing hasn't improved for many years. Although he's older than me, he's too complacent and doesn't want to improve. It's only a matter of time before he's eliminated." Miling didn't mind. "I'm a bit curious. Fellow Taoist Miling is so eager to recommend me. I wonder." "Xiao Daoyu, don't worry. I don't have any ulterior motives. It's just that there's a rule in the tower. If you recommend a cultivator with good qualifications and a clean background, the tower will give you a generous reward. That's why I'm so eager. As the saying goes, one doesn't get up early if there's no profit. However, the profit I'm after won't bring you any harm." Miling explained. "Then I'm being overly suspicious." Xiao nodded. Then, Miling began to teach Xiao the awakening secret technique. Although this secret technique was a bit complicated and exquisite, it was similar to the Tao of forbidden formations. As long as one understood a few of the essence and studied it, ordinary cultivators would be able to master it in a short time. After all, Xiaolingyu was an expert in the Tao of forbidden formations. Thus, he would be able to master the awakening secret technique much faster. Just as Meiling was teaching Xiaolingyu the awakening secret technique, the door to Ding Mao's room was pushed open again. The person who came in was the old man who had been expelled, Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing looked extremely angry. He stared at Meiling and said angrily, "You ungrateful bastard! When you first came, if it weren't for my constant guidance, you would have been pushed out before you could even get a foothold. Today, you used a dirty trick to drive me out." Meiling sneered and said, "Come on, when did I not beg you to give me pointers? When did you not pretend to give me pointers and then blackmail me for a large sum of yang crystals? Moreover, it's fine if you don't want to improve, but you often deceive the guests, causing our awakening secret technique to be criticized outside. It's inevitable that you will be driven out." "Fine, fine, fine. It's a small world. Let's wait and see," Yuan Qing said angrily. "Don't give me that. With your little ability, what can you do to me when we meet in the future?" Meiling said contemptuously. Although Meiling looked young, he was an expert in the awakening secret technique on the third floor. It was obvious that his cultivation was much stronger than Yuan Qing's. Yuan Qing knew that he couldn't get the upper hand with his words today, so he glared at Xiaolingyu again and left in a hurry. "He won't hold a grudge against me, right?" Xiaolingyu said. Chapter 782. After Meiling gave a few more pointers, he returned to the third floor. According to the usual practice of the Awakening God Tower, a newly arrived Awakening God Master would immediately work for 10 years after comprehending the Awakening God Essence. However, a normal Awakening God Master would need a period of time to study. Therefore, he would only cultivate in his own room for a few days or even a few months. Xiaolingyu only took 2 days to master the Awakening God Essence. After that, he took out the jade slips that he had purchased earlier and read them one by one. Through the contents of these jade slips, Xiaolingyu had a further understanding of the world of immortals. The world of immortals was also a boundless world. The spatial and temporal fluctuations were completely different from the God realm. Even an immortal realm expert would find it difficult to truly grasp the spatial fluctuations of the world of immortals, not to mention the more ethereal temporal fluctuations. These jade slips mentioned that the majority of the cultivators in the world of immortals were in the immortality realm. Above the immortality realm, there were 2 more realms, namely the Nirvana realm and the extreme star realm. As for whether there were even stronger experts above the extreme star realm, that was unknown. The immortal realm had 9 heavenly layers. Each layer required a long period of accumulation to achieve a breakthrough. Generally, cultivators who ascended from the lower realm were below the 4th heavenly layer of immortals. Those with good aptitudes could ascend to the 3rd heavenly layer of immortals. Those with average aptitudes could only ascend to the 1st heavenly layer of immortals. For example, Xiaolingyu, who ascended to the 5th heavenly layer of immortals, he could be called a rare genius. In fact, the reason why Xiaolingyu could reach his current realm was because his cultivation method was too special. Before he had passed the world of immortals in the lower realm, he was already in the Chaos 10th Revolution creation realm. After that, he had dual cultivation with 2 immortal realm virgins, which increased his strength by a lot. After passing the immortal tribulation, his strength improved greatly, allowing him to reach the Chaos 10th Revolution creation realm. If it wasn't for the fact that he had only been in this realm for a short period of time, he would have already reached the Chaos 6th Revolution or even the 7th Revolution creation realm. On the other hand, Xiaolingyu's cultivation of primal chaos origin force allowed his true strength to far surpass his cultivation level. As long as he could familiarize himself with the space-time of the immortal world and everyone's divine abilities, he would be able to easily deal with ordinary 7th heavenly layer immortal realm cultivators. This was his biggest advantage after losing the 2 primal chaos treasures. When they cultivated to the peak, not only could they borrow the power of the world of immortals, they could also mobilize the endless power of the distant stars in the world of immortals. The extreme star realm didn't have any clear division of realms. The number of cultivators who could cultivate to this realm was originally very few. Adding on the fact that each of them had outstanding innate talent, cultivated their own system, and each had their own unique abilities and characteristics, the extreme star realm experts only had battle power, and not realms. Because the number of extreme star realm experts was too few, and they didn't come out often, the jade slip that Xiao Lingyu purchased didn't have a detailed description. In fact, in the world of immortals, those who could reach the nirvana realm were already considered expert. They were existences that the majority of the world of immortals looked up to. And the extreme star realm was an existence that most people couldn't even look up to. The jade slips were all purchased in the Gourd City. Of course, the majority of the jade slips introduced the Gourd Bay. The Gourd Bay was located at the southwest corner of the Immortals' mainland. If one looked down from the sky, it looked like 2 different-sized circular seas joined together. Its outer appearance resembled a gourd, hence the name. Among the 2 circular seas, the one closest to the mainland was called the Inner Sea of the Gourd Bay. The one facing the sea was called the Outer Sea of the Gourd Bay. Both the Inner Sea and the Outer Sea had a vast sea area and countless verdant pearl-like islands. In short, the Gourd Bay was a place with abundant cultivation resources. Even in the entire southwest region of the Immortals' mainland, it could be considered a flourishing place. According to legend, the Gourd Bay was originally a part of the mainland. It was formed by an extremely powerful extreme star realm expert who plucked 2 stars from the sky and smashed them down. This legend had no basis to investigate, no one knew if it was true or false, but it also showed how terrifying the extreme star realm expert was. The cultivation of the Nirvana realm required an extremely brilliant and targeted technique to complement it. However, the immortal realm was not like this. In the world of immortals, the majority of the immortal realm cultivators only used one technique to cultivate. That was because this technique was very safe and reliable. The experience of countless predecessors proved that this technique was the most direct and also the most reliable. Everyone knew about this technique. It was to hunt those inland and oceanic vicious beasts, demonic beasts or ferocious beasts, and absorb the energy from their life pearl to strengthen the cultivator's own realm. Of course, one could also use relatively special heavenly treasures as a substitute. For example, Xiao Lingyu was currently at the peak of the 5th celestial layer, but if he wanted to advance to the 6th celestial layer, he would need to collect 6 pure yang life pearls and 6 pure moon pearls. Moreover, these life pearls must all come from demonic beasts at the 6th celestial layer. If the cultivator went out alone to collect them, it would be very difficult. After all, not everyone could challenge those who were stronger than them. Moreover, they would have to challenge those who were stronger than them multiple times. They would have to face opponents with different physiques and abilities. The majority of the cultivators relied on joining some big and small forces. They relied on the strength of a team to obtain the resources needed to advance. That was why there were very few lone cultivators in the world of immortals. There were also cultivators who relied on other people or other forces, clans, and shops to accumulate yang crystals. Afterwards, they would purchase the cultivation resources they needed to achieve a breakthrough in realm. For example, the awakening master in this awakening god tower and the receptionist in those restaurants, tea houses, and shops were the representatives of this type. Their accumulation was relatively slow, but it was safe and reliable. After all, the thing that the cultivators in the world of immortals lacked the most was time. The Jade Slip also introduced the contents of this gourd island and gourd city. The gourd island was the largest island in the gourd bay that was closest to the Immortals' mainland. It was the place where the experts in the inner sea of the gourd bay gathered. Because this island was only several tens of thousands of li away from the mainland, one could go straight to the inland and also see the ocean from afar. The cultivators waded through the ocean. All the materials they obtained would need to be transported to the mainland via the gourd island. The people from the mainland would use the gourd island as a springboard, as the last supply station, and then go deep into the ocean. Over time, this created the prosperity of the gourd island. If the gourd island was the heart of the gourd bay's inner sea, then the only large city on the gourd island, the gourd city, would be the heart of the gourd island. Such an important gourd island and gourd city naturally had experts from the great powers of the Immortals' realm to control them. As for which great power it was, the Jade Slip didn't give a detailed introduction. However, the Jade Slip did explain one point. That was, there were two great clans in the gourd city whose strength couldn't be underestimated. Apart from the city lord's mansion, they were the two existences that couldn't be provoked the most in the gourd city. They were respectively the Yun clan in the east of the city and the Sang clan in the west of the city. Chapter 783. As a spirit awakening sorcerer, one's own realm and mastery of spirit awakening techniques were the most important, but experience was also not to be underestimated. Shaolin Yu was at the peak of the fifth celestial layer of longevity. In terms of realm, there was absolutely no problem. As someone who excelled in the Tao of restriction formations, his understanding of spirit awakening formations had already reached a level where he had a thorough understanding. The only thing he lacked was experience, and this experience could only be accumulated by continuously awakening other cultivators. The cultivators who had entered his room at the beginning naturally became the targets of his experience. Fortunately, although these cultivators were very unlucky to have met a newbie and had to endure more pain than facing other spirit awakening sorcerers, they all walked out smoothly. Not a single one of them had their souls scattered. If such a thing really happened, the Spirit Awakening Tower would definitely pay compensation for it, and Shaolin Yu would also have to pack up and leave. Of course, as long as one was completely focused and careful when using the Spirit Awakening technique, there would generally not be any problems. After accumulating experience for 10 days, Shaolin Yu always gradually relaxed after awakening dozens of cultivators. He also became more proficient in using the Spirit Awakening technique. Then, he continuously used the Spirit Awakening technique like a machine. The feeling was just like the factory workers on Earth. Every day, they repeated the same process over and over again without getting tired of it. Then, they gradually became numb and bored. Fortunately, it was a rotation once every 100 years. Fortunately, each rotation only lasted for 10 years. Otherwise, no matter how good this job was, Shaolin Yu would consider leaving. What Shaolin Yu didn't expect was that less than a month after he became a Spirit Awakening sorcerer, he actually met an acquaintance. This acquaintance was none other than one of Shaolin Yu's wives, Jiang Lanchong. "Why are you here?" After Jiang Lanchong came in, she was first stunned. After carefully looking at Shaolin Yu's appearance, she was incomparably surprised. Shaolin Yu was also extremely surprised. However, after being stunned for a moment, he smiled and said, "Your husband knew you would come, so I was waiting here." Jiang Lanchong rolled his eyes and asked curiously, "Don't talk nonsense. Tell me, why are you here?" The reason behind this is truly hard to explain with just a few words. However, all these aren't important. What's important is that not long after I arrived at the Lifelong Realm, I managed to find you. Shaolin Yu appeared to be very happy. She couldn't help but secretly praise herself for choosing the Awakening God Tower this time. "It's not just about finding me. Finding me is equivalent to finding everyone else. Everyone, follow me back. A slightly plump, middle-aged cultivator lazily called out to everyone. Second steward, wait a moment. Jiang Lanchang said in a low voice. The Yun clan's second steward, that slightly plump, middle-aged cultivator, turned around and frowned. His eyebrows were less than an inch long, and he said unhappily, "What's wrong? This is our husband. Since we've found our husband, we won't stay in the Yun clan any longer." Jiang Lanchang said righteously. "This one is Xiao Lingyu, humph. What a joke." Without waiting for Xiao Lingyu to finish speaking, the plump man opened his mouth and said with a gloomy expression, "What kind of place do you think the Yun clan is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Let's not talk about anything else. Do you know how many yang crystals the Yun clan spent to wake you up?" "This one will repay all the yang crystals spent," Xiao Lingyu replied. At this moment, everyone who was close to Xiao Lingyu stood behind him. The second steward swayed his fat body and walked shakily in front of Xiao Lingyu. He said, "Are you the awakening master of the Awakening God Tower?" The awakening master of the Awakening God Tower had the same attire and was very easy to recognize. "What? Do you think you can cause trouble for the Yun clan just because you have the Awakening God Tower as your backer?" The second steward sneered. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm just discussing the matter," Xiao Lingyu said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to discuss matters with the Yun clan?" The second steward was not polite and did not buy it. Instead, he said with a strong sense of disdain, "May I ask, second steward, what do you need to discuss matters with the Yun clan? Second steward is so strong and unyielding. You should need something very powerful, right?" Xiao Lingyu asked with a smile. "Haha!" The cultivators on the first floor's hall laughed loudly. "Humph! You're courting death." The second steward was enraged. The fat on his face trembled. He waved his arm and looked like he was going to slap Xiao Lingyu's face. The Yun clan was a rich and powerful family in Gourd City. The entire clan was extremely powerful and naturally had many experts. This second steward of the Yun clan was an expert at the 7th celestial layer of longevity. The second steward sent out his palm in anger. Although it was hurried and his palm's strength was insufficient, it was extremely fast. Moreover, it carried a powerful aura. The second steward had been in Gourd City for many years. From Xiao Lingyu's attire, he could tell that Xiao Lingyu was just an ordinary awakening spirit cultivator. Her realm was definitely below his. Therefore, he was determined to win this palm. In his opinion, the other party would definitely not be able to dodge. Indeed, the other party did not dodge,